Whoops. So, welcome to the Mostly Peaceful Podcast on YouTube with your favorite show hosts, Aristill.
And Volocel, and we're here for the second time, the second attempt at the fourth time to bring you our news and opinions on the political silly season that we are currently involved in as it winds up to its inevitable climax with the November 3rd United States general election for the new president. We have attempted to do this show before, but because Aristotle is bad at streaming, it
Well,
sort of disappeared into the ether.
it's kind of good that I was bad at streaming, otherwise, we'd be streaming this live to one of the YouTube channels, whichever one is pre set up in the stream, instead of pre
Right.
recording it to make sure that we don't accidentally gaff too hard.
And by gaff, you mean get put in some kind of camp.
Yeah, which is where we're
But
headed if anybody figures out who we are and that we do this show.
I think it would be very easy to figure out who I am. Like, I've given up caring at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be
Um,
hard to find me either. It's just we don't want to draw attention.
but yeah, so we have got a number of topics that happened this week. No, I don't feel like there were any like new juggernauts, but there's been some development in the things that have happened over the course of the time. Plus, uh, Joe Biden always kindly supplies us with new material to laugh at because, well, I don't know. He's a bad person, so I don't feel too bad about laughing at him, but it is always seems a little bit iffy to be basically just mocking an old person for being old and losing their marbles.
Yeah,
But, I
but
mean, when he
he
admits that he's losing his marbles, then I'll feel sorry for him.
but yeah, he has been a bad man that has done bad things throughout his whole life. And a lot of the stuff we were a little cagey on because last week we couldn't find real good succinct summaries or uh, drawn out anything on the scandals that were going on. By now they've been 110% confirmed with the FBI coming out, or not the FBI, the Director of National Intelligence, I think, coming out saying, yeah, no, this stuff's legit. It's not any kind of Russian interference or anything, much to the dismay of a certain watermelon head that got around and was saying, oh, it's directly from the Kremlin.
Yeah, and that directly from the Kremlin thing, that really bugged a few people who were involved in the documents which were exposed, particularly those documents regarding a deal involving Hunter Biden and the CEFC. Not just Hunter Biden, but also Jim Biden, and implicated in it was Joe Biden himself. Now, this this deal involved the formation of a company, a business. I think eventually it was called Xenohawk. But the Bidens have no talent at anything. That's
Yeah.
just part of being a Biden, is that you're a useless member of society. So they're not actually capable of running a business, and they needed to bring in people to help them. And one of the people that was brought in is a man who goes by Tommy Bobulinski. Now, this guy is he's been a Democrat supporter for a long time. He's served his country. He worked at a very high level. He's got high security clearance because he was working in nuclear intelligence, I believe, or something like that. Like as far like he was in charge of training things involving the deployment of nuclear power in the United States. So he's at a pretty high level. Um, and so he served in the military. His brother has served in the military. His grandfather served in the military. He's very proud of his loyalty to his country and the amount of years that his family have served his country. And now this pencil necked idiot has come out and basically accused him and his family of treason. He was less than amused.
Yeah. So,
So he reacted to this by calling Bob Walker, I think the guy's name is, who is basically the Biden family's public face. He's their representative dude, and saying, you get Schiff to retract that within. I think he gave him like a deadline of like Sunday night, which I think at the time was like a few days or something. And if it's not retracted by midnight, I'm going to go public with everything. And that didn't happen. They didn't retract anything. I'm not really surprised. Wouldn't expect them to, because that would show a level of self-awareness that I'm fairly sure the Democrats are simply not capable of. But so ultimately, Bobulinski decided, okay, that's the way it's going to be. I'm going to go loud. I'm going to make sure the American people know what this family is really like. And he couldn't find anyone to carry the story,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly. And eventually, the only person who was willing to actually sit him down and talk with him about this was Tucker Carlson from Fox News. So, I mean, obviously, Tucker Carlson, he's carrying political water for the Trump campaign. But, I mean, nobody else is going to listen to the guy. So, despite the fact that it was somebody who he doesn't agree with politically from across the other side of the aisle, Bobulinski sat down with Tucker and they did an interview on what his take was of the contents of the Hunter Biden hard drive concerning the business deals in China and the sort of the dealings that the Biden family had in general. Now, Bobulinski was involved in one particular investment, not really an investment since they weren't really putting anything in, but a business dealing that was being done with CEFC. CEFC is a major Chinese energy firm, or at least it was at the time. I don't know if it's still operating or still operating under that name, but the higher ups in CEFC are also higher ups in the Chinese Communist Party, which is sort of mandatory to be a successful mass business in China. Now, because the Bidens don't have any talent, they had brought in several people, one of which is Bobulinski, and they were going to structure this company, Sinohawk, to basically act as a
A shell
they were all going
company.
to put some money in. It wasn't really a shell company. I can't even work out what it was that the company was supposed to do. It was a holdings company essentially, but there was going to be equity divided up amongst various people. There was Bobulinski who was going to be holding some portion of it. Another guy, another businessman, who was going to be holding a portion of it, and then in addition, there was going to be the Bidens. They were going to be holding portions of it as well, and so this business deal was well, basically Bobulinski was brought in to be the guy who works out the details because he's a um, successful figure in American finance. He's very wealthy. He didn't really stand to gain anything by coming clean about this. Like, this is not a grift. He's not expecting to get money or anything out of him having come clean on what the Bidens were involved in because he's got plenty of money. He doesn't need to worry about that kind of thing. But he wants to clear his family's name since he's being treated as a treasonous Russian asset by the morons like Adam Schiff. Honestly, Adam Schiff really seems to be failing to do anything but beclown himself every time he opens his mouth this year.
He,
Presumably that's the norm for him.
him and Rachel Maddow have serious Russia-related issues. Like
They have a real
those,
fixation.
yeah, they just think everything is the Russians. If anything happens that doesn't fit the Democrat Party at that moment, oh, the Russians did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they haven't been like that under the Obama administration, though.
Yeah, it's a
Russians were our friends under the Obama administration, is their point of view.
yeah.
But
This is a very recent development with them.
yeah, at one point during the interview, Bobulinski's just straight up, listen, the Cold War is over. But yeah, so the Biden's act to try and bring in Bobulinski, and he gets invited to meet with Joe Biden himself uh, at I think in Los Angeles, a speaking engagement that Joe Biden was going to be doing. They had arranged a special meeting at a bar or something. Um, Now, this was not a meeting Bobulinski had requested. This was something that Jim and Hunter Biden had set up because they were bringing him in on this deal, and Bobulinski says that he's pretty clear on what was going on here. That effectively Joe Biden is the patriarch of the Biden family and is cut in on all of these deals and is deeply involved in all of these deals. So Biden shows up at the restaurant or whatever it was, and Hunter goes off to brief him on what the meeting's going to be about, what the details are. Is this going to be a high level sort of meeting and discussion of the various perspectives and so on and so forth? Not hammering down fine details of the business, but Hunter says, "Oh, this is the guy that I've told you about. This is the guy Tommy that I've told you about, who's going to be involved in helping us sort out the China deal." And so it's pretty clear that Biden was straight up lying about not being involved in his son's business dealings.
Yep.
I mean, we were all assuming that, but now we've got sort of a first-hand account of this is Joe Biden being involved in these business deals.
Yeah, we have firsthand testimony that Joe Biden lied to everybody, to their faces, multiple times.
Yeah, and Bobulinski digresses briefly to say that he, as we know, he was invited by Donald Trump to attend the debates, the most recent one, I think. And he said that there were several times where he had to restrain himself from starting to shout liar and from just storming out of the debate because everything that he was seeing Joe Biden say on stage was complete bull. And he knew from personal experience that it was bull. So
We called even from the outside, by the way, on a 7-hour show you can go watch.
yeah, so they have a meeting. They discuss bits and pieces, nothing particularly deep, but Bobulinski's then testifies that where they're referring to people like the big guy and the chairman, and that those references are by the likes of Jim and Hunter Biden are to Joe Biden because the family operates as a Biden family, as an entity, as a business entity, not in the legal sense, but in the practical sense. Everything goes through the Biden family as part of it's the Biden name, which is the thing they've got that is valuable. And Joe Biden is cut in on all the deals and has, it seems, based on their dealings, he's also got power of veto over various details. So for instance, one of the situations was where Bobulinski was trying to convince the his business partners and the Bidens that they needed to implement a better system of governance for the holdings company, and this was the situation where Hunter used the term the chairman, but the chairman had vetoed this, and that was understood by Bobulinski through his dealings with the Bidens in the past that they were referring to Joe Biden himself, and this was denied outright by the media, who claimed that, oh no, they're referring to the chairman of CEFC, they're not referring to Biden, but the other people involved know that it was referring to Biden as well. It was referring to Joe Biden as well. So yeah, the whole thing is basically it's very like an organized crime family type of thing. Everything goes through the Don, who's in charge, and the various people working under him are just working to sort of generate money for the company. But the key thing here is that the central pitch for these people, these Bidens who are going and sorting out these deals, is always their name. They don't have any qualifications. None of them, as I mentioned, are good at anything or useful for any purpose whatsoever. They have no talents.
Yeah, the
Uh,
one family member that had some accomplishments has passed away at this point, and whenever anybody tries to talk about Hunter, Joe immediately goes, "But Bo!"
yes, yes, yes. We've heard you talk about Bo. We know there are lots of members of your family that at various points you choose to believe don't exist. But
Like two of your grandkids.
yeah. So ultimately, Bobulinski gets deeper and invested in this particular thing. To him, it's just a business deal. It's not. It doesn't present any conflict of interest or problems for him. He's a legitimate businessman. The other businessman involved is also a legitimate businessman. They do deals all over the world, investments all over the world. They work in finance, is what they do. But he starts to get a bit suspicious about how this could possibly be wise for the Bidens to be doing, because they carry high security clearances on account of Biden having sat as VP in the past, and he at one point he just directly asks Jim Biden, like, how are you guys getting away with all of this? Isn't this too risky? Isn't this going to be presenting a problem for Joe Biden's future in politics, as he's he's run for president in the past. He's probably going to run for president again. This seems like you're just baiting bad headlines, and Jim Biden just sort of laughs it off and he says, "We've got plausible deniability. That's all we need. It's fine." They don't take it very seriously at all.
It shows you how much the Democrat Party knows, or rather, the candidates in the Democrat Party know how much the media is in the tank for them, and just going to bail them out when anything like this happens.
And after the fact, though, when Bobulinski threatened to go to the press, Bob Walker, the Biden representative, was not really quite so sanguine about it, and basically said to Bobulinski, if you go public with all this, if you go on the record, then you're going to bury all of us. So he doesn't have quite so much faith in the media and Democrat, but I repeat myself, establishments to cover up for the Biden's involvements overseas. But so Bobulinski basically hears from Hunter Biden about a variety of different involvements they have over the course of time, business deals in Oman, Luxembourg, Kazakhstan, Romania. But he reiterates that there is no reason for the Bidens to be involved in business dealings in any of these countries. They don't have any talents. They're not good at anything. The only thing that they're doing is trading on the fact that the family patriarch Joe Biden is an important politician. That's all. That's all they've got. They don't have anything else. They aren't bringing any expertise. They aren't bringing any investment. They're just doing deals on the Biden name. Everything is about the Biden family, the Biden family's legacy. From top to bottom, that's all that it's about. So the documents from the CEFC, when they're setting up this company, the CEFC is going to invest in Sinohawk Holdings in the amount of $10 million. $5 million are going to be invested in the form of capitalization from CEFC as their investment in this business venture, and 5 million are going to be functionally a loan. And it's interesting to note that in the material from the Chinese government, they do not detail it as a loan to the individuals who are actually the stakeholders in this company. It doesn't say Bobulinski's name there. It doesn't say Joe Biden. It doesn't say Joe Biden. It doesn't say Hunter Biden. It doesn't say Jim Biden. It's always in all their documents. It's a loan to the Biden family. So you can tell from the Chinese point of view what they can see they're investing in. They're investing in the Biden family and the weight that their name has, politically speaking.
Yeah. Also, apologies if you just heard that. I opened up an article in my browser and it started autoplaying a Project Veritas ad. So, if y'all heard a brief blah 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 there, that's what that was.
Not a paid advertisement.
No.
So, yeah, the deal seemed not to quite go off as it was intended. Bobulinski says that over the course of time, that $10 million never actually seemed to appear in their accounts. So he's out of pocket. He's running around the world trying to set up these meetings, try and work out what's going on. 6 months pass, and the $10 million promised still hasn't shown up. And he reaches out to various people involved who fob him off, and eventually he reaches out to Hunter Biden and asks him, what's going on? Have you gone behind my back on this? Are you trying to negotiate something else in parallel that you haven't told me about? Well, what is going on? This thing has been lying fallow for 6 months. And Hunter says that, I'm now the chairman of CEFC's personal attorney, and we only discuss things in person now, and I've got a whole bunch of deals that I'm working on now. Now, the background for this one, though, is that in the course of that 6 months, it became clear that CEFC was planning on doing a business deal wherein they would purchase a 14% share of Rosneft in a deal valued at about $9 billion. Rosneft is it's one of the largest energy companies in Russia, probably second largest, approximately, I'd say, and it's about 70% owned by the Russian state. So this is a massive deal involving members of the Russian state, of the Chinese Communist Party, and somehow Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has managed to ensconce himself by weight of his name as the personal advisor and attorney for the chairman of the energy company that is actually tendering this 14% share deal. So at this point, you've got the Bidens are now entangled with a Chinese energy company, Russian energy companies, the Chinese and Russian governments, and at this point, he doesn't say it directly, but it sounds like Bobulinski has decided he was going to cut his losses and get out at this point because it's gotten way too complicated for him. There's no route to him actually making a profit out of this business, uh, and it's starting to involve bigwigs all trading on the Biden family name, who are operating at a level that's this is out of his league. He's not going to involve himself in these massive state deals. So yeah. Um, Basically, yeah, this has confirmed pretty unambiguously that there is a humongous amount of graft going on in the Biden family.
So yeah,
They are 100% involved in business dealings with hostile foreign governments, using the weight of Joe Biden's political power in order to broker deals and turn personal profit out of it. It's unambiguous from this one case alone. It is unambiguous that that's what the Bidens are involved in. And Bobulinski supposes that he only knows from his involvement with the Bidens, he is only privy to maybe a 10% slice of the number of deals that they're involved in overseas. And that he knows that there are other deals like the Burisma deal, like Kazakhstan, like Oman, all these other business dealings. He doesn't know anything about them. He just knows, having had them mentioned to him by Hunter Biden or Jim Biden themselves, that those deals exist, and they're all trading on Biden political power in order to make profit.
yeah. All of this just reaffirms what we all basically. I want to say what we suspected, but we all knew it. We all knew that Joe was doing this kind of stuff and his family was doing this kind of stuff, and plausible deniability was going to be their excuse. But now we have somebody out and out saying that's the case with first person testimony that, yeah, I was there, I saw this, this is for real what happened. And nobody's talking about it that isn't a conservative outlet.
I think that while it's not necessarily a surprising story, I think that it may well be the more important story, because Democrat politicians being almost comically corrupt is nothing new. But the the simple reality that we've got this open, proven, demonstrable case of deep corruption where the entire Biden clan is basically compromised and in the pocket of foreign governments for millions of dollars, that the media would just be disinterested in it, just
Yeah.
completely disinterested in it. That's the real story. That's the real problem.
And this continues in the other topics we'll talk about later, but it's just it highlights to I hope it highlights to normies that don't follow politics as closely as we do, or as much as maybe that one guy at the water cooler that watches way too much Ben Shapiro does. But can you tell I have one of those? But 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 yeah, it just it should highlight to them that the media is totally in the pocketbook of the Democrat Party and basically just another wing of the Democratic Party. They are the Ministry of Truth. They're here to tell you the stuff from the Democrats' narrative and from a Democrat perspective, and not tell you anything resembling the truth or what's actually going on.
Well, there's not as much profit in that because there's there's kickbacks for the media, not necessarily direct ones, but they in sculpting the narrative, they are able to effectively pad their own importance. They're able to groom their own careers to make themselves more important in the eyes of others, particularly within their clique. And that's really that competition to be the most party loyal person around. That's where this sort of behavior tends to come from. And ultimately it does devolve into backbiting and betrayal. So I hope that those people, they're aware that there's a shelf life to their behavior.
I the Democrats are a whole lot of things, but self-aware is not one of them. So they are probably unaware of where this road leads, even though it's incredibly obvious to anybody with two functioning eyeballs and has looked at history before. Like just a casual glance in during your world history class would have worked. But no, these people can't even do that. And I don't really know what to say about it because this is when I see something like this, my initial reaction is, okay, the media is a problem. There's a problem. Now what do I do about it? And other than tell more people about it by talking louder and making a show and sticking it on YouTube, I don't really have a good answer.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the only thing that you can really do is effectively attempt to compete with the media, compete with their narrative, and it's not a very efficient or effective way of doing things. But I mean, it is something that has gradually started acquiring grassroots support. If you look at the number of people who are talking about these things, people who were, once upon a time they were unbelievably boring normies, people like Beanie Man and that,
Yeah.
who are now willing to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Like it is spreading, and I feel like, well, it seems to me like the mainstream media is frightened that they see themselves, their grip on the narrative, their grip on domination of all truth is slipping, and that's why they seem to hate new media so much. Is why YouTube works so aggressively to try and put an end to this kind of thing, because they know that their dominion won't last in the face of everybody being allowed to speak.
Yeah, and they've taken these short term gains by siding with the Democratic Party now and endorsing these absolutely nuts ideas that once they get BTFO'd will come back to bite them all in the butt. And they're part of a legacy media that is still based on the television, and they're not adapting to the internetosphere when they should have already adapted to it a decade ago.
But I mean, you can tell that YouTube is operating on their side, and not just in the sense of censorship. If you look at the sorts of things that they promote, like
Yeah,
even the likes of Fox News, like, because Fox News is part of that old media establishment, is
yeah,
why I don't agree with this characterization of them being representatives of the conservative right, because number one,
they're not.
most of them aren't that conservative, and
See Chris Wallace.
number two, they are being promoted by YouTube. CNN is being promoted by YouTube. All those late night talk show hosts, they're all being promoted by YouTube. The YouTube algorithm promotes old media on the platform of new media. And
Yeah,
that goes to show what side they're on. They are not actually trying to even operate in their own interests as far as being a media platform is concerned. They don't actually want new media to flourish. They want to turn new media into old media, because that's where the political power is.
yeah. Like if you want proof of this, if you're somebody that doesn't quite understand what we're talking about, you can do a real simple experiment right now. Go to youtube.com, search for any topic that's political. Look for COVID, look for the the riots that have been going on, look for the anything like that. Anything this year that's been a current event, look for election coverage and just do a YouTube search and tell me how far you have to scroll or how many pages you have to click through until you finally get a source that isn't mainstream media.
Yeah, I resent doing the show research, because, like I said, the interview with Bob Alinsky was an interview conducted by Tucker for Fox News. But now that I've searched for a Fox News article on YouTube, I know that my recommendeds are going to be drowning in Fox News content from now on, and I'm going to have to start to filter it all out.
Yeah. It's like they give so much weight to it. I
That's
used to
how
have
the algorithm works.
I used to have a plugin that just any video from any of these sites and you could uncheck ones that you wanted to see. But any of the mainstream media websites and or news organizations, it would just filter them out of YouTube search results. Like it would just not show them. But eventually, it got that add-on got the kiss of death and didn't get updated anymore. And I really, really want to see it updated because that was really handy.
Isn't it funny how that always seems to happen?
Yeah, and it was killed fast too. I only had it for about 3 months. So yeah, it's really it's really nasty how much the Democrats just own the media right now. But the silver lining here is they can't you can't stop the train here. The train has no brakes. We're going to move into the internet culture and the internet disseminating information from independent creators, whether people like it or not. people will just keep talking. Like, we'll keep talking. We probably won't ever have that many viewers, but we'll keep talking. And other people that are more successful or luckier than us will keep talking. And the mainstream media can't do anything about it because eventually people will get tired of it and go searching other places for their news.
Yep.
So that's the good news there. And do you have anything else on Bobulinski, or you want to move on to one of the smaller
There's
bits?
not there's not any real need to cover it in any further detail. But basically, this is a case where somebody has proof positive. Like, this is not just his testimony. He has the receipts. He's got all of these materials, all of these documents, all these screenshots, all of these texts. You could not ask for any more evidence than he's provided. It would simply be not possible for anyone to come up with any more evidence. He's been so thorough. He's got all of the information, like a sort of person who's involved in, business dealings in countries which may or may not be stable, certainly in a lot of cases aren't honest. He's made sure to keep records of everything, and he's got them, and he's presented them.
But
And this is what he's gotten for his trouble, is that he's been accused of being a traitor by Adam Schiff.
Adam Schiff just looks like either a bobblehead doll or one of those stress toys that their eyeballs pop out when you squeeze them. I can't take that guy seriously because of the way he looks.
Yeah, he's there seems I can't take Nedler seriously because of the way he looks either. So
I'm telling you, if you become a Democrat, something happens to you that turns you into a literal monster.
yeah, I mean, if you look at Pelosi or Feinstein or Nadler, all those people, they're all, what is wrong with you?
Does not help their case that they're not actually possessed by demons.
Yeah, they're really not good at making a convincing argument on that count, I have to say.
Yeah. So, continuing on then from the Bobulinski story, we have tangential stories that are sort of related to it we can touch on. The first one is, let's do big tech censorship, because we touched on this before, but we didn't hammer on it. Ted Cruz, unfortunately, did not get his wish. He wanted to haul the big tech giants personally in front of the Judiciary Committee. Now, the Judiciary Committee has a lot of Democrat shills and the couple people on the Republican side that are not very motivated to fix this problem because they're old. But the people that would hit them hard, and they would do it to their face. And he wanted them in person. No, none of this COVID, we need to do it remotely garbage. Because it's a totally different experience if you have to face down the guy in the same room as you who is telling you you're a liar than listening to somebody over a TV screen say it.
Yeah, and a lot of these big tech moguls are like, aside from probably Zuckerberg, who doesn't have the common sense of humanity because he's a lizard person, most of them are unbelievable cowards.
Yeah.
Jack Dorsey being the most cowardly among them.
Yeah. And so, Hobo Man Jack Dorsey is the chief culprit in this series of questions. And
so, for those who don't remember, he's the CEO of Twitter, and he was responsible for the censorship of the New York Post story first breaking the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yeah. So we did not take detailed notes on these, but it's fairly simple to cover. So the first question Ted Cruz asks of Jack Dorsey, and he's the one we're going to focus on, is, does Twitter have the ability to influence elections? And Dorsey says no. And you see Ted for a second blink twice and kind of have to shake his head a little bit and tilt his head because he's genuinely flabbergasted by the audacity of that answer.
I don't know if that's the case. I think that Ted knew what Jack would say and wanted him to say it on the record because it only makes Jack look like a retard.
Yeah. And so we don't have any solid answers from Jack on any of the questions that Ted asked because he would just keep repeating the same lines that his lawyer told him to say. And it was not, I do not recall, because that doesn't play well with the American public. They know that one. And people that have watched the Vic Mignogna lawsuit really know that one. But he gave this line that was somewhere along the lines of, oh, well, it violated our hacked materials policy, and that's why we had to take down the New York Times story, and they're not banned right now. If they remove the infringing post, they can repost the exact same thing again. And he would give this answer over and over and over again anytime Ted Cruz asks a question. And finally, Ted Cruz gets fed up with it somewhere in the middle of it and goes, so unless New York Post genuflects and virtue signals to you people, to the left-wing people in your organization, they're not allowed to use your platform. And Jack Dorsey just repeats that stupid line again.
Incidentally, that has recently been proven to have been a bald-faced lie, because despite their refusal to genuflect, eventually Twitter did, in fact, release their ban completely.
Yeah.
So the supposed necessity of them removing the post that got them banned before they can post again, that was bullcrap. It was not true at all.
Supposedly.
It was just something that he was saying.
Yeah. Supposedly people couldn't post the New York Post article anyway, even while Jack was saying this to the Commerce Committee's face.
Yeah. The whole thing was a lie, and it's the sort of lie you tell under two conditions. Number one, you believe yourself untouchable, and number two, you believe you've got nothing to lose. Those are the only two situations. And I think that in this case, it is both of them. Jack Dorsey knows that that the Democrat establishment has his back, and if they win the next election, he'll be home free. And he also knows that he's pushed the status of being a platform way, way further than anybody is willing to let it go. And so if the Democrats do not lose the next election, his head is if the Democrats do not win the next election, his head is on the chopping block.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's got really any motivation to be an honest dealer. If he doesn't have that integrity himself, he's got no motivation to actually show any integrity whatsoever. Because it's not going to benefit him in any way.
Yeah. And it really shows with the way he presents himself. Like, he's been hanging around his homeless buddies in San Francisco too much. This dude looks like a hobo. He's got...
Yeah, that nose ring, man. Like, don't you just want to grab that and rip it out of his face?
Yeah. He's got an ugly nose ring, this giant hobo beard. His hair's disheveled in this hearing. Like, he is as disrespectfully presented as possible.
Absolute contempt for the process, because he knows that it just doesn't matter.
Like, I get on people's case when they try to defend Beanie Man wearing the beanie to the White House. But I can understand that better than I can understand the way Jack looked at this interview. Or not interview, but hearing, whatever. And Cruz wasn't the only one that grilled him, but Cruz grilled him the hardest. And Jack just lied to his face.
I felt like Cruz wanted to grab him and shake him. Like, he was not very happy with Jack, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm convinced Ted Cruz wanted him in that office for that hearing so that he could drop kick him after he lied for the nth time. But yeah, so the Twitter censorship has gotten out of control. I have a picture somewhere, if I can dig it up while I'm talking, of somebody just posting a picture of Snoopy talking about the number of people at a Trump rally, and it getting censored by Twitter with potentially sensitive content. Ah, yes, here it is. I'll put it up on the screen for you. So, so yeah. Don't know how accurate that is, but it appears that it is literally just a picture of the Peanuts gang and Snoopy going hooray at 56,000 people at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania. So Twitter's out of control, even more so than the already out of control Facebook and YouTube. And Facebook has also... Zuckerberg we have often called the least evil of the great tech evils, but he is still a great tech evil. And he also is a blatant liar. Because today, this Sunday, Facebook began the purge and called it an error. An error in enforcement, I think, is what Trump said they said. And
the thing is that they know that nobody believes that, but they don't care.
Yeah, so today, some 26,000 accounts just poofed, or died, or were locked, or some degree of of disciplinary action was taken that were previously in good standing. And some of these were just pictures of pretty ladies with very little clothes on that very clearly supported Trump in those pictures. So this was a targeted attack. It's obvious it was a targeted attack, and Facebook realized they were caught immediately and called out by the president himself, so they had to walk it back. But they didn't walk it back all the way because I'm still hearing reports of people still being banned.
Well, why would they? That's not how things work in their world.
Yeah,
In their world, they can do what they want, and there's nobody to stop them.
I think they feel threatened by the pretty ladies they banned. Honestly, their boobies were just way bigger than theirs, and they know they'll never have naturals that big.
I dare not speculate.
Oh, I do, and I think that's exactly why they go after the pretty Trump ladies. So, I still have us on my YouTube page. Whoops, let me flip us back to the cover photo. So, you got to see Project Veritas's pages, which we can talk about in a transition here. So, censorship continues with disinformation. And that.
Or accusations of disinformation, which are disinformation in and of themselves.
Yes, that is why you heard the start of a Project Veritas video playing earlier when you saw my whatchamacallit. What do you call it? Okay, so Project Veritas started a lawsuit with the New York Times because the New York Times has called their articles and their videos. What did they say? I gotta hover over to find it.
Like a coordinated disinformation campaign.
Yeah, coordinated deceptive disinformation campaign.
All right, so this is in relation to the expose they did on ballot harvesting in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they had released a bunch of videos. I don't know if we talked about them previously, but there were people they interviewed on camera going around. They've got cars full of ballots. So basically, this is an operation being conducted on behalf of Ilhan Omar and either a relative or friend or associate of hers or something who is involved in campaigning in that region amongst the Somali community, particularly that these people are operating, and it's all transparent ballot harvesting. There's no question about that. That's what it is. There's nobody's attempting to hide it, but the New York Times decided to report on this as being an intentionally misleading, effectively deceptive. They're trying to say, oh well, I mean, this is all based on unsourced material. We can't see any sources for this.
And notice how even though Project Veritas and their first-hand interviews where they go up and they talk to the person involved would be considered a primary source by 99.9 repeating percent of people before 2016, they're now unverified.
Yeah. It's funny. The things that get designated unverified versus the things that are verified these days. I can't really follow anymore. It's very hard for me to figure out which ones are which.
I think that they're just treating it like verified on Twitter, which means you have a blue check mark. And if you don't have a blue check mark in the heads of a lefty, then you're not verified.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, I guess that definition is straightforward. But yeah, so the argument from the New York Times is approximately this: that the law preventing someone, well, the extant law in Minnesota is that you can't assist in the delivery of more than 3 ballots. That's their standard approach, if I recall correctly. And that this law was put into enforcement of this law was temporarily suspended by a court decision. And that this means, according to the New York Times, this means that Project Veritas was misleading by deceptively portraying as illegal something that was not illegal.
Yeah, except that lady admitted she did it for years.
Well, it's not even a matter of whether it was done for years or not, because suspending the enforcement of a law does not make the act legal.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, New York Times. It's still illegal on the books. They did not say anything incorrect. Just because it is the enforcement of it has been forcibly suspended does not mean that it is now suddenly legal. It just means that you won't be collared for it.
Yeah, it's the discussion we had amongst ourselves last night about decriminalization,
No,
where
it's not even decriminalization.
it's oh yeah,
They
it's even worse.
it has not,
It's just not enforcement. That's right. So it's
yeah,
even
it's just
worse.
decriminalization. At least you could then make an argument. Well, the actual
There's
legal
something on the books. Yeah.
yeah, if the legal status of the acts had actually changed, well, there would be a strong argument that could be made by the New York Times that's the case. Maybe they were very slightly imprecise, but it's within the reasonable range of imprecision that you would expect from a non-legal expert. But in this case, they've just simply claimed that it's illegal when it's flatly not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's that's what they're saying. Is they're claiming that it's not illegal when it is. It is on the books as legal. At any rate, the attacker's liable to be one of claiming, oh well, I mean, this is just opinion. That's just opinion. We aren't obliged to conform to in our opinions to what you think to be the case, etc., etc. Never mind the fact that they presented their story as fact and not as an opinion piece, which I don't know whether or how solid that is as a form of legal defense, but or offense, as the case may be. How are you going to make the case? I don't know. There's also some implications that rather than Project Veritas being implicated in a coordinated disinformation campaign, as they're terming it, it seems like, in fact, that surprise, surprise, that's projection. Because
Yep.
the story goes, and this is all sort of like, it's not correct to say that it's unconfirmed, but the actual ramifications of it are not yet clear. That it seems that the source by which it was determined to be a coordinated disinformation campaign was put up 62 or 63 minutes or something before the article using it as the source was put up. So what you're then assuming, and this was the source was, I think, like a Stanford publication or article or something. The assumption there then is that there was somebody at the New York Times who was capable of reading whatever 1,500 words of article and then drafting from scratch a report based on that article and getting it signed off and published in a span of 62 minutes or 63 minutes or whatever it was.
That guy's the fastest reader and typist in the world.
And the editorial department just works like greased lightning, apparently, which
Yeah.
is something that everybody knows editorial departments are not capable of.
Considering every single time somebody ranks a New York Times article these days, I have to go, man, where's your copy editor while I'm flicking through it? Because there's so many punctuation errors.
I don't think they have copy editors at the New York Times, but yeah. So there's a certain amount of suggestion that they were actually colluding with the writers of this article that they were referencing in order to generate a justification for terming the Project Veritas videos as disinformation.
Yeah.
So they are actively involved in a disinformation campaign directed at Project Veritas to designate them as disinformation.
Yeah.
Which that's ballsy. That's ballsy. I'll give them that.
It's can Democrats do anything that isn't projection?
Evidently not.
The party of tolerance.
Fine details.
Yeah, the party of tolerance that you're supposed to accept others for who they are and just accept that they think differently from you doesn't believe other people can think differently from themselves. It just doesn't compute with them. So, this is their end game, right? Because this was election related is why I'm convinced they did it.
Of course.
Because their end game has been these stupid mail-in ballots and rigging this election. I think
they need that excuse. They the whole to my mind, the purpose of this exercise was to invalidate a potential Trump victory by you're basically canvassing the population that reads the mainstream media material with predictions of a phantom win for the Republicans, so that people are primed in advance with the assumption that an actual electoral win will then be obviated by the subsequent counting of mail-in ballots.
If
They,
it
they, they wrote the story in advance.
if it wasn't obvious from them pushing mail-in ballots at the start of COVID, the article about the Red Mirage that came out about 3 months ago, 2 months ago maybe. The time flow this year is so hard to keep track of. But whenever it came out ago, should be bright neon lights that says this is their end game in all capital letters, underlined, bolded with an exclamation point after the end. In fact, give it 27 exclamation points. And
Wow, old one.
that's a, yep, yes it is. So, yeah, it's in tangent to that. We have other stories about election tomfoolery going on with the mail-in ballots. So to just keep the segues rolling, Pennsylvania voters are not receiving their ballots.
Yeah, that's just a thing.
Yeah,
Because the mail-in ballot system is flawless and will never have any problems.
yeah, these are mostly absentee ballots, as in they requested an absentee ballot and are not getting them because they'll be out of state and they're just not getting them, from what I've seen.
Well, the thing is that people who request absentee ballots tend to be legitimate voters.
Yeah, so
They don't need those types of people getting votes.
So I don't have hard numbers on the number of people affected, but I see posts about it all over the Donald this past 2 days of people saying it's practically election time and I do not have my ballot to postmark by election date.
Because you see, that's all that they have to do is stall them out that long. But in spite of which, they have nevertheless, a lot of these states have managed to procure permission to continue counting ballots long after the date of the election. Presumably, they're using, when it comes to actually making the case in court, they're probably using situations like this as their justification for being able to continue to count votes long after the election.
Yeah, this is a thorough operation. They have dropped all pretense of playing fair and running a legitimate candidate with any ideas because right now the Democrat Party has been subsumed by the crazies. So the people that are competent, their only game plan to win is to cheat. And that should be clear to everybody. And I'm tearing my hair out at people that are still saying, well, we'll wait and see on election. Like, no, you idiots. They're going to cheat. We've missed the window of opportunity to be trying to rally people up and get people to scream about this. And you guys need to be loud now still.
But there's no question they're going to cheat. The only question is how successful will they be at cheating on a scale enough to tip the scales?
Yeah. And even if they don't flip the presidency, I keep telling people there's like, well, they can't cheat enough to flip the presidency. Okay, maybe Trump will still win. Great. Think about what we could do with a supermajority in the House.
Yeah, I know Trump is optimistic about winning back the House, but I don't think that I'm going to see that happen. As much as I would be entertained by it, I don't think I'm going to see that happen.
We'll be lucky to get a simple majority with a few swing votes. If cheating is as rampant as I expect it to be. Because I don't think anybody's going to vote for Joe Biden. I don't even think people are going to vote for Joe Biden against Trump. Joe Biden is the lowest energy anything in the world. And if you sit on Twitter all day, tweet about how much you hate the orange man because he's Satan, you're not going to be the type of person that's very motivated to go waste your precious time waiting in line for an hour and a half to go vote because you waited too long and didn't vote early. Or you just weren't going to go to begin with, because driving up to the park that's 10 minutes up the road to go walk in the community center and wait 10 minutes to go drop a ballot off for early voting is just too much work for you little Twitter Tumblrite. So, without this mail-in voting shenanigans, I am convinced this would be a Reagan-style landslide. Like, we'd see maybe Cali and Washington, Oregon, and New York stay blue. Actually, New York's probably in play with what they've done to New York. So
yeah, well, no, everybody's afraid to leave their houses in New York, though. So
So yeah, but yeah, that goes back to the cheating. And in this fantasy land I'm constructing, pretending to be a leftist for a minute, that there is no cheating. Trump wins in a 47 state landslide at minimum because they cannot justify anything they've done to the average worker, the average man, the person that makes up the most common demographic of voting block, the average dude who has a job and needs to go vote at some point because he feels it's his civic duty to do so, well, and leaves his family at home and they may or may not vote. That dude has been destroyed by the Democrats, and Trump has set it up so it's abundantly clear that it's the Democrats. But the Democrats are so confident in their cheating, they're banking everything on it.
And it's not unreasonable either. They're very good at it. They've gotten away with it for years.
Yeah. And it's all through their connections with the media, as we mentioned before, and these big tech platforms now that we moved into the more modern era that just allows them to keep getting away with this stuff. And
Yeah, no, they're willing to tell lies like electoral fraud doesn't exist and that sort of thing. With lies which everybody knows to be untrue, but people are just so used to hearing lying from the media that it doesn't really register.
I used to give some credit to a good liar that could tell a technical truth that was deceptive, like politicians used to. Nowadays, they'll just tell you, "Oh no, Twitter doesn't have the ability to interfere with the election."
Yeah, they're just willing to tell lies that are so facially untrue, much like Joe Biden at the debates. It's like that's not true. Everybody knows this isn't true, but you know that the big lie is going to get traction because people want to believe it. There's a certain segment of a society that wants to believe that it is so, and they aren't really that interested in ascertaining reality if they can get their way, the way that will make them feel the most comfortable.
Yeah, and it's disgusting. In all honesty, I get called out by a bunch of people, I think unjustly, because I compare with a bunch of these rank and file Democrat sheep people that are just voting Democrat because they don't like the Orange Man out as what's a good way to describe it? I'm having a brain fart. I'm having a Joe Biden. I was going somewhere with this. Dang it! I
Why
was going somewhere with that. Save me.
Well, I don't know what you were trying to say, so I can't really save you. But it's very hard to make the civic duty to vote argument if your civic duty means so little to you that you're willing to totally neglect reality. Like
Right, right,
it seems very silly to me.
right. I get called out for comparing them to people playing on for a sports team rather than considering the broader implications of the people they vote for. They're not. You shouldn't treat politics as you're playing for Team Democrat or Team Trump. These are decisions that will affect every single American across the country, and those outside of it as well, because other countries look to America as the gateway to the West. Like we need to be.
It's something that we're seeing play out in New Zealand right now because like I mentioned, we had a big landslide victory for the left in the last election, and now that Team Blue versus Team Red, the colors are reversed in New Zealand relative to the United States. But now that Team Blue versus Team Red season is over, the people who voted for Labour are starting to remember that the woman that they've just put in power didn't accomplish any of her policy objectives last time and has never given them anything except a huge amount of debt and lockdowns that nobody asked for.
Yeah, and you're going to get the exact same thing if Joe Biden gets cheated into the White House. Like you're going to see people going, "Wait a minute. We just elected Joe Biden?" Cuz even before this, we've had Democrats, banging on their tambourines to post on TikTok, "Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden. Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden." That's a real
Yeah,
video.
they're trying to drown that in Orange Man bad. They're trying to stoke that boiler enough to drown out all the people who, regardless of which side of the political aisle you stand on, Joe Biden is a bad choice. If you're a far leftist radical, he's a bad choice. If you're right wing Bible thumper, he's a bad choice. If you're a enlightened centrist, he's a bad choice. He doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't have any values. It doesn't matter who you are. He's a bad choice, and the only way you can get people to vote for him is for Orange Man to appear to be the devil.
And if
And that's not actually a very efficient way to build an election campaign, especially when you are trying to campaign against someone with a record and a strong one.
yeah, like Trump has a strong position to play from until the Democrats came and screwed it up and they signaled they were going to shut down the economy forever. Beforehand, for those of you that don't remember, I think it was Bill Maher that said he desperately hoped the economy would crash so that Trump would lose. You know,
He said he wanted a recession.
yeah,
He wanted a recession, and all of the attendant suicide and destroyed lives and spousal abuse that a large-scale recession always ushers in. Like that's their priorities look like that.
yeah,
That's what it means to be a leftist.
their priority is more not even power, just control. Although control is a form of power, as long as they get to control people, that's all they care about. These people are obsessed with being able to laud their way of thinking and their way of doing things over people. They do not give a crap about the average man and what they go through. Your family that was doing fine with a small business that is now almost bankrupt because of this garbage, Democrats don't care. Like,
So they really have forgotten what the Great Depression was like. Like I don't have any memories of the Great Depression. I'm way too young for that. But I've read accounts from people who lived through it of what it was like, and the sheer number of people who just they couldn't cope with seeing their life destroyed anymore, and they just offed themselves. They couldn't do it.
yeah,
Couldn't do it anymore. It was over.
it
Everything that they worked for just dissolved into nothing. And
yeah,
that's what these people are advocating for. They're
and,
advocating for it, and all because they resent the fact that they didn't get to seize power in 2016.
yeah,
It's not even that they hate Trump. Most of them palled around with Trump once upon a time, but Trump robbed them of their hegemonic control that they were counting on getting.
yeah. And if you look at the headlines and compare them from then to today, 2016 was supposed to be a coronation. It was not supposed to be an election. And they thought they had it in the bag. But because they forgot about the baskets of deplorables all over the country, and because Hillary Clinton was so unlikable, her base did not Pokemon go to the polls, and Trump and
I remember that.
and and Trump's folks magged their way over there, reluctant probably at the time, but now extremely enthusiastic. I would say probably half of the people I talked to that were voting for Trump or voted for Trump were just kind of, I'm voting for him because he's not Hillary. I just kind of don't like what the Democrats are doing. It's not real cool, Maine. Kind of middle of the fluff, wishy-washy reasoning. But nowadays, I talk to anybody that's voting, and they're either Orange Man is bad or I'll crawl over broken glass to go vote for the man. And it's
He's
often
proven that he wasn't a protest vote. That's what's been proven now. Like even if people were voting in protest originally, he came to the party and did most of what people hoped for in a more or less kind of fashion. Did a bunch of good things. Spent way more money than anybody wanted him to, but you can't win them all. But so now he's actually a reasonable proposition. He's
yeah,
a reasonable voting proposition. In addition to the opponents putting up a corpse as the opponent.
yeah, and more importantly, he did what he said he would do. Less important than what people wanted him to do. He did what he said he was going to do, and that's
If nothing else, you can count on him to do that.
and that
Because
that
I mean, it's his brand. It's his brand. He's putting his brand on the line.
yeah, and whether by pride or by genuine love for the country or whatever excuse or reason you want to make for it, it makes Trump look like an honest man who's going to do what he says. And if you like what he's saying, you need to go vote for him.
Which is ironic because honestly, I don't really think he's that much of an honest man necessarily. But his brand is tied up in that. If he's going to play an honest man on TV, then he will damn well play it.
Yep. And he's been a straight shooter with us much more so than any other administration in the past that I can think of off the top of my head.
Now, in living memory, I would say.
Yeah. I cannot think of one that was as transparent as his has been, even going back as far as the 60s.
And he's the only one who hasn't expanded the power of the government.
Yeah. He's the only one that hasn't started new wars.
Like you think all of this stuff should be worth something, even to people who were standing on the other side of the aisle once upon a time.
Yeah.
Because it's all true. Can you imagine if it was being covered?
Yeah. He would be hailed as the next Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, I think you might even be in bigger trouble than you are now if he was being reported on accurately, because there might be people trying to crown him king.
Yeah, that would be a problem. Well, we kind of said no more kings as our mantra founding the country. That one may not fly. Maybe emperor. But then we'd be the
But
bad guy for realsies in the world stage.
the Geotis meme is a thing.
So, so yeah, it just does not make sense to me that people would vote for Biden. And there's still time left. I will try to get this up tonight for people to go and look through. You need to go talk to anybody that you know that's an undecided voter. I've been jabbering to everybody I can about the election as rationally and as tactfully as possible. And I know a lot of people are antsy because they know what Democrats do when they talk politics, and they want to be doom and gloom and tell you their worldviews and how you have to conform to them. Do not be like a Democrat when you do it. You can't take the Democrat approach. You cannot take the pure statistician approach and be a robot like Republicans usually do when they talk politics either. You have to find a balance of the two and talk to them like, I got food. Had a higher paycheck. I bought a few more video games when Trump was in office, and that was pretty cool. I like that. He hadn't done anything that's been real bad. I don't see a
And
reason to throw him out. That's how you need
that,
to approach people.
that's part of what makes me so incredulous about the behavior of the American people, because I've never experienced a administration in New Zealand which has actually, in a tangible way made things significantly better for me.
Yeah.
Like there's never a time where I'm taking home more money. Like it's true that they raised the minimum wage, but we all know what happens when you raise the minimum wage.
But
Costs of living go up proportionally. So I don't actually end up with any more spending power than I had before. But that's the only measurable change that has happened. There's nobody cutting my taxes and letting me take home more money at the end of the day. That doesn't happen.
yeah,
In New Zealand, that doesn't happen. Americans uniquely have the ability to measure what has been accomplished on their behalf, and I'm completely flabbergasted that they don't appreciate that.
the example I've been using to people that's fairly relatable is Trump, through his tax cuts over the 4 years he's been in office, effectively knocked out 2 car insurance payments for me. And it's just like Trump saying, "Don't worry, I got this," just through tax cuts. How is that not worth something?
Yeah, well, it's just this media smokescreen. It's this media smokescreen which has created, and the thing is, I've seen this argument used against Trump, that Trump creates a divisive environment, which is to the detriment of the country. But I'm not convinced. I think that the opposite is true. That it's the media reporting about Trump's divisiveness that casts this dark pall over the country, that suffocates people's appreciation of all the good things that have managed to be accomplished over the past 4 years that he was in office. Like people don't think that those things exist. It's one of those situations, everybody experiences those times when they're feeling depressed, and at those times you can't remember all of the good stuff that's happened. It doesn't cross your mind to do so. And creating that sort of oppressive environment where you can't remember all of the benefits, that's what the media have been trying to accomplish. They have been putting up, we are in an era of darkness and division, and everybody's
A,
going to die of the Rona,
a dark
etc.,
winter
etc.
is coming.
Yeah, the dark winter is coming, as he said. It's all doom and gloom, and you can see that in the third debate with Joe Biden's talking about that dark winter. That's all just propaganda to bring you down so that you can't call to mind all of the good things that have happened. That's the objective. That's the point. That's why he's doing it.
Yeah, like
They don't have anything substantive to do to argue against what has been accomplished, so they just have to try and make you forget.
yeah, because the Trump tax and program policy of less, more effective programs and less taxes in general to put more spending power in the people's pockets so that they give more through taxes because they're spending more money, worked. And the Democrats were railing against that for years. So they don't have a leg to stand on with any legitimate arguments economically. Oh, the Democrats' policy positions abroad? Oh, well, Trump didn't get us into any wars and brought peace to the Middle East, at least temporarily.
It's probably nobody can bring peace to the Middle East for good, but nobody's managed to accomplish what Trump has managed to do in decades.
Yeah.
Actually getting those lunatics around the table to begin with is a monumental accomplishment all on its own. He's managed to get several treaties established, which is unheard of. But
Yeah,
nobody can remember those things because all that they remember is, oh, the dark winter's coming.
yeah.
And that's what the Rona is all about. The Rona is being spun way out of proportion because the objective is to grind people down. I was talking to my friend in the UK yesterday, I believe, and he was talking about basically how they've gone back into lockdown again because the whole of the UK has basically been shoved into lockdown, and how he doesn't really know what he's doing anymore because he just grinds his way from day to day, doing really accomplishing nothing, and nothing is going anywhere because everything's under lockdown. There's nobody's got confidence in any kind of future or anything. There doesn't seem to be any direction. And I told him that's the purpose of the lockdowns. The purpose of the lockdowns is to grind people down so that they lose the will to do anything, so that they're willing to turn over their authority to autocrats.
Oopsie doodles. I didn't unmute my mic there for just a second, but it's back on now. But yeah, I don't think this is intentional on the part of the Democrat Party, but there's a fall-on effect with these handouts they're doing, and I know it's political suicide not to go for these handouts. When one party is saying we're going to give every single person several thousand or 1,000 and some change dollars, if you're the political party saying no, that's a bad idea, you're going to lose the election.
Yeah, that's one of the things that put the last nail in the coffin for the National Party during the New Zealand election, is that the leader of the National Party basically posited that the massive wage subsidy system wasn't sustainable. It wasn't something that we could just brush under the rug as part of the debt. We would need to recoup it somehow, maybe by turning part of it into a loan which could be paid back, since they just received the money for nothing. And that was political suicide.
Yeah, you can't get away with that. And it's unfortunate because it's building this sense of complacency and this further entrenchment of this slothful culture that we've really cultivated.
Take care of things. I don't need to worry because the government will take care of things.
Yeah, it is a very sinful, slothful, lazy, inappropriate way to live your life to assume that you can just laze around forever. We joke all the time and sometimes say genuinely after a long day at work that we would love to have a job where we can just play video games all day and laze around. But we know in our heart of hearts, for almost immediately after that, we got that scenario, we would be unfulfilled in life and feel depressed.
Anybody who's been trying to get a job and who had a job or was looking for a job and they're out of work, and that no matter how hard they try, they can't seem to land one. Like, I've been in that place before. Most people have at some point or other.
Yep.
Not everybody is lucky enough to have a family business on tap.
Well,
But a lot of
I
us have been in that position, and it's soul crushing,
yeah,
absolutely soul crushing. You just want to work. You just want to be able to earn your keep, to have a little bit of extra dosh in your bank account at the end of the day as proof that you didn't waste that day, and something that, I ground this up for myself. It was my accomplishment, and now I can do what I want with it. That's all
I,
you want.
I'm very fortunate that I had a family business to fall back on because I was looking for a job to go to that I could do part time while I was going to college, and I could not find one in the Obama presidency. There was not a now hiring sign up anywhere. And this is the easiest point to point to with anybody, not just Trump supporters that are being about iffy on going to vote, but anybody, and go, hey, look, how many now hiring signs did you see during the Obama era? None. They weren't there. You couldn't get a job even as a part timer. Well, how many did you see when Trump was in office? I see them now with the Rona lockdowns coming up. They're already back. And they are everywhere. Every single store. And before the Rona, it was ridiculous. Every single shop, every single mom and pop store, every single Mickey D's, every single Walmart, anywhere you wanted a part-time job, you could go and you could sign up to get some side cash while you're going to school or doing whatever. And not to mention the opportunities in substantial careers were just as good. this stuff I've been trying to highlight to people to get them away from the coronavirus scare, and it seems to have some traction, but it's one of the things that I can't really track very well. I just kind of have to hope it's working, and it seems to work when I'm talking to people, but I don't have any hard evidence that it does.
Yeah, it's the whole lockdown thing. It really does seem to be about the doom and gloom. I mean, it's not going to save anyone. Like, if you, I get mad every time I see people talking about my science. None of those people know anything about science. And the one thing you really learn about science once you're a part of it is that there's very little that is science.
It,
There's science is something that is very nearly non-existent in the real world. Everything is just engineering. It's guess and check, guess and check, guess and check. Do a thing, see what happens. Do a thing, see what happens. That's not actually science. Science is about modeling and prediction. And if there's one thing that we know absolutely 150% sure about the Rona, it's that no modeling and prediction has come within a country mile of accuracy at any point in this whole debacle.
yeah, and it's so bad with the Rona. In fact, it's global warming tier so bad that it has to be intentional. And the normies have trouble seeing this when they see all these big, supposedly important people coming up on the television and telling them, oh, it's so bad, it's going to kill you. Even if it was as bad as they say, even if they were 100% right, you are being treated like an animal, being forced to live in your home and feel terrible about everything and sacrifice your entire life over the chance of death.
Yeah, it's the thing. The thing is that if you understand a little bit about the theory, the lockdowns don't make any sense because what you are functionally doing with the lockdowns is you are preserving the most dangerous form of the virus. Generally speaking, viruses attenuate over time. That's why there is no cripplingly dangerous virus that has, well, basically, if you imagine a coronavirus, a different coronavirus, a coronavirus that is exactly as bad as they want you to believe this one is. Imagine that virus exists. There's no reason for it to suddenly exist now. Viruses are one of the oldest forms of quote life unquote, because it's pretty dubious about whether they're living things or not. It's one of the oldest types of pathogen in existence. It's one of the simplest. If there's no reason to believe that over the course of humanity's history, such a virus, which is just going to be the new normal, would not have arrived in the past. And the reason for that is viruses attenuate. They don't last forever. They go away on their own. That's why there's no swine flu running rampant around the world. There's no SARS running rampant around the world. Like these viruses, they come and they go. They come and they go. They always come and they go.
But
And
but
they have to come and
Trump
go.
was wrong when he said it would one day just be gone.
Well, the thing is that he is wrong. He is wrong in the strictest sense of the word, in the lawyerly sense of the word. He is wrong because the coronavirus will always be around. But the thing is, the coronavirus has always been around. Nothing is new here. A virus which kills its host does not propagate itself. A virus which makes a portion of the population immune without being able to spread itself is because it's not manifesting symptoms, it does not propagate itself. If you put everybody in lockdown and keep everybody as a vulnerable prospective infective vector for the virus, which will get sick and when they have a chance to come into contact with people because their vulnerability has been preserved, rather than letting it move naturally through the population, you're just making sure that that version of the virus, which is dangerously virulent, will continue to exist for as long as possible, that it will continue to be in the population.
Yep.
You need these things to naturally attenuate, or they will hang around forever. that's the problem. What normally happens is a virus will rip through the population. Enough people will get it that it ceases to matter anymore, and as the virus multiplies and goes through the population, it will get weaker and weaker and weaker. Ones that continue to be lethal all the time, the things like if you look at things like the HIV or things like Ebola and they're continuously lethal, it's because that they just don't spread that fast for the most part. Like you need to do something very distinct. In the case of those viruses, it's usually coming into contact with fluids of some kind. It's because they're not very, very contagious in from a certain point of view, that they remain lethal because they don't have the opportunity to basically be attenuated by their movement through a population. Because Ebola obliterates the people that get it. If somebody who gets Ebola turns into a puddle of liquid, and then that's the end of it. That liquid can't go anywhere. It's not going to pass Ebola on to anyone else.
Yep.
In the case of the coronavirus, it passes it on. It manages to get itself passed on to everybody, and the more times it gets passed on, it's going to become more attenuated over the course of time. That's just how it happens. Viruses want to be less lethal. For instance, every single smoker in the world has tobacco mosaic virus in their body. It does nothing to them. The only thing that it does is it hangs out. That's what it does. Because it doesn't do any harm to humans whatsoever. Humans aren't really a good vector for propagating it, but it just happens to be a virus that is very, very good at getting into places and never leaving. But it's completely harmless to humans. But it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. It didn't suddenly turn into a virulent thing that hurts humans, because that's not what viruses do. Viruses just want to exist, basically. They exist in the numbers that they are permitted to because they are just genetic material. They don't have any intent. They don't have any direction. They exist in exactly the form that they are permitted to. And a lethal virus is not permitted to continue to exist because it dies with its host, ultimately.
Yep.
So lockdowns are not based on any kind of scientific insight whatsoever. They are an economic move, ultimately.
In areas where they may not be an economic move, they are a method of control to force you to learn to be okay with Big Daddy government doing things for you and to accept that these people have power over you.
I mean, I think that there are world leaders who are totally duped, who do think that, or they're doing a good thing here, because to a casual look by a person who hasn't really thought about contagion and pathogenesis very much, it's not unreasonable to suppose that you should stay away from people who are sick. The weird inversion that everybody seems to be not bothering to pay attention to is that never in the history of the world do we quarantine the healthy away from the sick rather than the sick away from the healthy.
Yeah. It 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 seems like these people trust their experts too much, I think. I want to label this a bureaucratic issue rather than a human error issue. It is a human error issue, but I don't know. I haven't thought about it hard enough in these terms to really give you a coherent thing here.
There is that hanging spectre of the great reset that everybody talks about, and that's one of those conspiracy theories that is very easy to believe, because honestly, it's not really a conspiracy theory. It all took place in plain view. The Great Reset is something that is referred to in public documentation and so on and so forth. Whether or not they are now and successfully carrying it out, evidence seems pretty strong that this is an opportunity. But the nature of of these real sort of one world government uber conspiracy theories, like they tend to be things that are carried out by degrees over a long period of time, not things that involve some sort of concentrated cover up like 9/11 truthers, where they're doing something incredibly spectacular and large in plain view under the scrutiny of everybody, and then trying to find a way to cover it up. Like that's not how these things typically deploy. Things like the Great Reset, on the other hand, that's just ultimately that's a speculative method of carrying out something that they always intended to carry out, which is to subjugate the world by means of the economy, and using an event like a pandemic as a leveraging point for that. Because all of these documents exist. The folks out at Davos and the UN and that have got materials talking about, oh well, there's this theoretical world in which a pandemic is contracted from a bat and then spreads through the population, and we react this way and that way and the other way. But don't worry, as when you turn over all economic power to the government, then everything will be okay. You won't own anything anymore, and you won't have any freedom, but you'll be safe from the virus. That's the direction. And I don't know if they are dumb enough to try and carry that out in plain view, but it's certainly their goal to do so. Ultimately,
Yeah.
I mean, I I hate to be that conspiracy theorist guy, but the reality is that they've been doing this for a long time.
Well,
And the thing is, I suppose that I'm very amenable to believing it because New Zealand has historically been a test bed for these things. Like the idea that you can seed a terrorist event and then confiscate everybody's firearms with no resistance. Well, that was just tested in New Zealand, wasn't it?
yeah. It the Great Reset is a conspiracy theory I don't have as much trouble saying might have some credibility because it's a natural reaction of an elite that has power at the moment when they're given the prime opportunity to seize more power.
Well, it's also just what they want,
Yeah.
right? Whether or not it's a organized conspiracy with these particular goals to be carried out on this particular timeline in this particular way is almost not relevant because it's all stuff that they want and they'll take an opportunity if they get one. Why wouldn't they? They do want to have centralized world government. They do want to have a centralized unified world economy. They do want a state of mass socialism where everything is under the control of the technocratic experts. These are all things that they just want. They've always wanted them. You can see it in all of their UN resolutions and that type of thing. They don't hide it. They think that they're doing what's good for everybody, so why would they hide it? They think everybody will agree with them and play in with their plans. That's the big thing. The big objection that I always have to conspiracy theories is that most of the things that people regard as conspiracy theories aren't even secret.
Yeah.
They're just things that powerful people want and will take the opportunity to get them when it arises, as powerful people have always done. There's nothing new about that. Nothing special or strange.
Yeah, it is I don't want to use the word Occam's razor because that's not appropriate for describing how the elites go about doing stuff like this. But if something could happen by itself as a natural reaction given opportunity in any kind of circle where people have power, it is reasonable to say, yeah, they're probably doing that. So, and the Great Reset could fall into that kind of category where it's just the natural thing they would do. If they want to create an opportunity to get more power, and then they take it. And we have seen most of that opportunity be manufactured before our eyes.
Yeah, and people are willing to do it. That's the thing. You create that extreme environment, you get everybody afraid, and they will let you take their freedom away. We don't have that baked in rebelliousness against people trying to take your freedom away that America has in most of the rest of the Anglosphere. It's just not there.
And even not
People
most
don't
of
stand
America
by
now.
for it.
There's the baskets of deplorables up in the breadbasket states, the Midwest, in air quotes, and the South. Everywhere else in America is totally okay with getting on board with this globalist agenda, aside from the few outposts we have in these areas out in the countryside.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced by anything that they say. Like it's just not it's not credible. And because the thing is, I speak from the perspective of an expert. Like I'm not a specialist about viruses, but I am a doctor of microbiology. I've got a reasonable amount of insight into the basic functioning of a lot of these things. But ultimately, that doesn't matter because what you hear from are not experts. What you hear from are bureaucrats, the people who have been able to select the expert opinions that they like. It's like how at work I have this argument with literally every superior that um, I would tell them happily I don't agree with all this mask wearing stuff. I think that there are plenty of studies that show that it has no significant effect on viral spread whatsoever, and that the only reason that you think otherwise is that you picked different studies, ones that support your preconceived point of view, and they just won't accept it. They won't accept it at all. I work in the scientific technical services. All of these people are supposed to have at least a rough grasp of science, but no, they can't even grasp the fact that maybe they were just picking the experts that suit them.
And it's very hard. Yeah, it's very hard, even as a normal person, to condition yourself to be resistant to your preconceived notions. You can never kill it, but you can condition yourself to be resistant to it and to catch yourself when you're doing it, and you usually don't even catch yourself in the moment. But it takes practice and effort, and 99.9 repeating percent of people are not going to do that. They have to have been royally kicked upside the head by their own preconceived notions in the past to even consider it. And right now, it gets them political clout if they go along with the mask thing.
Yeah, it's very much a symbol, and it's not about public health at all. It's just about, are you one of the goodies or the baddies?
Yeah,
It's
it is.
purely about virtue signaling.
It is literally wearing a badge for your team, and it's so interesting to me that the masks especially became commonplace when, yeah, I could see how they could push that narrative, but specifically, it's an easy signal to voters or to voting poll workers who's coming in that's a Republican. Anybody
Yeah,
with.
I don't feel like that was deliberate, but it's certainly going to be an assumption that is in place.
Anybody without a mask walking in there is not voting for Biden. And I want to give a warning to people that are going to the polls. When you go to the polls, do not let a poll worker touch your ballot. Period. In sentence. Don't let them do it. If they tell you the machine is broken, say, okay, I'll wait. And there are stories all over various websites like the Farms and the Donald of people that are like, yeah, as soon as I said that, the machine magically started working again. Don't let these people touch your ballot. Because especially if you're not putting up with this crap and walking in without a mask and doing the patriotic thing of saying, I'm not going to listen to tyranny, then they're going to know you're a Republican. Just by the fact that you don't have a muzzle on.
Yeah, and I object to them mainly on that tyranny basis. Like, if I actually thought that there was a chance that there was any reasonable motivation behind it, maybe I would be a bit friendlier to the idea. But forcing people to wear an item of clothing to mark them out is a traditional act of humiliation.
Yeah.
It's to break people down. That's always what it's been. That's why tyrants do that type of thing, is to humiliate people, to mark them out as untouchables, unwanted.
And it's why you have to, in this day and age, with this form of tyranny, you are blessed with the access to the internet. And this, while social media has completely destroyed our cultures all around the world, the ability to connect with people in other ways through the internet, or just talk to people in general, has given you a way to embolden yourself to be courageous in the face of this garbage. And hold your head up high when you're walking through the supermarket without a mask on, and in your head laugh at all these people that are walking by with a muzzle on their face, of these ugly face diapers, because Big Daddy government told them to, and they don't even know why.
Yeah, there's a vague feeling that it's good for them because the government told them it was.
Yeah.
It's not really substantive. And the thing that I felt that it was proof positive that there was no actual public health intent behind them when they started advocating on sustainability grounds for reusable masks, when there aren't any studies that support the idea of reusable cloth masks being superior to disposable ones. Like, you can find studies that support mask wearing in general if you look for them. If that's your objective, to find such a thing, you can find them. You can't find any that say reusable ones are better. Period. Yeah. They all say that they're worse because they're made out of garbage and people don't clean them.
Yep.
It's not even arguable. There's no discussion to be had.
But what do people do with their masks?
They shove them in their pocket to collect lint and garbage. They rub their hands all over them after having touched who knows what.
Yeah, they'll go to the supermarket. They'll go to the supermarket, touch everything they're buying, touch everything around the store, take their mask off, rub everything they touched all over that mask, and then shove it in their pocket after they crumple it up, put it all over their hands, leave it in that pocket. It's exposed to everything that gets near your pocket. Anytime your hand wanders into your pocket, and you're going somewhere, you got to put the mask back on. And you will reuse that same mask over and over again.
It's like, note that there are no hospitals in the world that reuse masks. Like, they just don't, ever, for any reason. It doesn't happen, period.
Yeah.
Because it's just dumb. It's just dumb. As soon as we're in the situation where there's supposedly a an earth-shattering pandemic, and then you start talking about sustainability when allegedly our species is on the verge of extinction due to the common cold, like I'm sorry, but I don't understand how anybody with two brain cells to rub together can buy into this crap.
Yeah, I don't either. I called this BS from day one. I gave it maybe a week of wiggle room, but halfway into 15 days slow the spread, I was definitely on board of screw this. This is all BS. They're going to use this to mess with the election. Watch, because it was
Yeah.
so obvious. It was so obvious, but nobody believed me at the time.
And it did mess with the election here. It did mess with the election here. If there was no COVID, there would be no election for Jacinda. Even as much of a disaster as the National Party was, I think that there would have been no opportunity for Jacinda to form a majority government, let alone she wouldn't be able to form a coalition, let alone a majority government, because she singularly failed to carry out a single one of her campaign promises.
Yeah,
Not one. Not one. Her average progress towards her goals is roughly 0.6 based on the tabulations that I saw. That's that's how much progress she managed to make over the course of her 3-year term. There's no election for that woman, except COVID happened. Except COVID happened. And she managed to seize control over the people's minds by shutting them in their houses with nothing to do except to wait for her next press conference in the hope she would tell them they could go back to work.
2020 and the COVID fiasco. It will be a tragedy if it goes down in history and is treated as a legitimate health concern that happened, and if within 20 years it isn't exposed for the fraud that it was.
Oh, if it does, then society will have already fallen. You won't need to worry about that anymore because at that point, history is just being rewritten. Because there are no facts to back up the COVID disaster. Unfortunately for them, there aren't any concrete facts to suggest that this is anything like the danger that they've been purporting it to be. There's nothing to support that point of view.
If
Ultimately.
if in 20 years the COVID fiasco is treated as legitimate, I'm putting on a tinfoil hat and saying that companies are dumping chemicals in the water specifically to turn the frogs gay.
I'm not sure what the end game is there, but
Like at
yeah.
that point, they've just rewritten history, so anything can be true.
Well, yeah, but that's the core leftist philosophy in my mind is that truth is pliable. That's what makes leftists leftists.
Like
Everybody has a different way of drawing their axes, but that's the way I draw mine. Is the belief that reality is pliable to the narrative. That's the core of leftism.
yeah, if they're able to rewrite history, it means that all of history needs to be questioned as did it happen or not.
Well, that's always been the case to a greater or lesser extent, but at the point where you can just unilaterally declare that, oh well, humanity would have gone extinct if not for the brave actions of President Joe Biden, locking down the American nation and destroying their economy, so that they went into the worst depression in American history, and after 200 years, the country managed to rise back to its former level of prosperity. Like that's what's left at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I start believing all the crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theories at that point. Just to have a better shot than actual history, if nothing else. They have a
So like I say, I've seen this stuff execute in real time. I've seen what COVID does to an election. I've seen what you know what you can do when you get people scared. How you can just pass legislation unilaterally without bothering to go through process. Like all of these things already happened in New Zealand. Seen all of them.
yeah.
We've got those quarantine camps. Like it's the Fox story on it sensationalized it a great deal and ticked off a lot of New Zealanders because the average New Zealander is not going to see it as a quarantine camp because it's a hotel. But ultimately, they can still just decide that they want to put you in there and keep you there. And what can you say in opposition to it? Nothing,
Well,
because that's the rules.
and they took your
If you're
guns
going
away.
to be quarantined, and they can since COVID is not based on anything much but speculation, they can make any kind of justification they want to actually decide to quarantine you theoretically. Since all of these emergency protocols have just basically been created whole cloth from nothing. They were never in place for any other previous epidemic or pandemic. But we've got these things in New Zealand now. All the things that COVID has brought us, the things like masking, the things like the police force, if they suspect you of breaching uh, COVID rules, they can just enter your house and apprehend people at will. The stuff from the terrorist attack, mandatory confiscation of firearms. Everybody who possesses a firearm that doesn't fall within within the government strictures is now automatically a criminal. The police are allowed to enter your house without a warrant and turn it over if they suspect that you have firearms that you aren't supposed to. Um, or if they don't suspect you have firearms you're supposed to, but they suspect that you might be connected to a far right group, then they can come in and turn your house over without any kind of authorization from a judge. Like these are all things that are real in New Zealand. They are the things that are real, their day-to-day life in my country.
Man,
We are the test bed for all of the things that they are going to try and carry out in your country if Joe Biden wins the election.
yeah, they're probably going to have to mow over the rural regions of every single state and the South. But
They've burned Georgia before.
yeah, I mean they got to Atlanta before. The Phoenix is the city's spirit animal for a reason. But oh man, it's a mess. It really is. Okay. Do you want to end on a happy note and we'll close out?
We got a happy note.
We do.
Finally, I need one.
We can end on some making fun of the evil old man that's running on the Democrat Party, because that's always fun. So, Joe Biden had a few gaffes, like back
There's
to
like,
back to
and
back.
The sun rose in the east and set in the west.
But these were so quick and so ridiculous back to back to back. He had three of them, and one of them's a video. I don't have a meme of it yet because it just happened, but he's doing some rally somewhere, and I think his eyes just go bad, and he can't read the teleprompter because he goes, and this onomatopoeia of whatever the heck Joe Biden just said has become a running joke, and I love it.
I'll be honest, the thing that impressed me the most was the consistency with which people use the same spelling.
Whoever got the first one first and spread it around got traction. Everybody just copies that one. And then later, he was trying to talk about healthcare and his healthcare plan, and this came out as Bacadathacare.
How do you even get there?
Yeah, I don't know if he was trying to say Obamacare with Biden care mixed together, or Durka Durka your mom jihad.
He is an evil man, but this is still elder abuse.
Yeah, but he was a really bad man.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you're allowed to deprive him of his human rights, unfortunately. But this is just the way it works. If you are going to establish a principle of basic human rights, then until you convict him in a court of law, you still have to treat him like a human being. Unfortunately, he's an evil man, to be sure. He's done evil things, and he has a total disregard for the nation that he is supposed to love. But this is still elder abuse. I mean, if it makes you feel better, it's Democrats that are guilty of it. but
I mean, I'm about to say, this may, if you want to label it elder abuse, I suppose so, but it's all on his family and the Democrat Party.
Yeah, I think that as evil a man as he is, I'd say that what his wife is doing to him now is at least as evil as anything Joe's ever done.
Yeah, this is awful. And then, but yeah, so I reserve the right to make fun of the evil old man while he's being paraded around by the Democrat Party, because it's not my responsibility to make sure Joe's taken care of and not displayed for the whole world to make fun of. So I'm going to do my due diligence and make fun of everything he does that's funny. And that includes his latest gaffe, which I don't even know what he said. He goes in this incoherent ramble in Pennsylvania today. And just his brain, it's like he has a seizure on camera almost. He doesn't like twitch out or anything, but his brain just forgets the language center of how to, the thing.
Now, I was pretty blown away the numbers that Trump got in Pennsylvania. Like,
Oh
I know his
yeah,
rallies are big, but that was pretty damn impressive, I have to say.
yep. We got a picture for that one too.
And,
Uh,
and, and Trump announced that he was in the last 48 hours before the election, he was going to do 10 rallies.
that boy
10.
doesn't stop.
Yes, I wonder if he's using meth as well because
He,
holy crap, he's
I,
busy.
I've said it before in private conversations between the two of us that I would not be surprised, and honestly, nor would I care if Trump got caught using Adderall or something, and was just like, "Yeah, I have to do that. I got a lot of hours to work, man. You try being the leader of the free world, there ain't enough time to sleep."
Yeah, not everybody can just call a lid.
Yeah, like, but Trump is seriously like the Energizer Bunny. Like this dude just keeps going and going and going. He is going hard. You have his family out there. Don Jr.'s doing radio hits and show hits every second he gets a chance to. Eric Trump's out there getting more rallies together that are smaller and smaller towns to get people to turn out and show support for Trump. Like this guy's got his whole family, his whole campaign staff going nonstop, and he's right up there with them. That's a sign of a good leader in general, I think.
Well, I've heard that he's got campaign staff who are just begging him to slow down lest he do something to himself.
Yeah, like this is gonna hurt. I mean, it's only at most gonna go for a few more days, but the dude, you need to get some sleep. I don't sleep that very much, and I'm way younger than you.
He's not younger. He's not significantly younger than Joe Biden, is he?
No, he's got like I think I do not remember off the top of my head. I think he's about 4 years younger than Joe.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount. You can see the difference, though, can't you?
But yeah, it's so clear that compare old Trump to current Trump. Current Trump is, a little more bouncy, a little more whimsical in his speech making than old Trump might have been when he was younger, but he's still on point and sharp and talking at the same speed and rate that he was before. Joe has gone from an average speaker to I don't even know what to analogize Joe to. He's just slowed down so much. Oh. And as somebody that fumbles their words a lot, I'm embarrassed by how much Joe Biden fumbles his words on camera.
With a teleprompter to help him.
Yeah. Like, good Lord, Joe. But yeah, this Trump rally in Pennsylvania, we should mention this real quick. The dude got 57,000 people. 57,000. That's rock concert numbers in the words of James Woods.
Yeah, and this is in a state that all of the polls are predicting he's going to get whomped in.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Don't believe your lying eyes. And in the picture I have on screen, I have a picture of 57,000 over the Trump crowd and 114 at Joe's biggest rally in some. It was a drive-in rally in Georgia, my state. So he got some turnout here.
Another state that the polls are assuring me is blue.
Yeah, it's only blue if they cheat to hell and back again. They don't have any.
If you poll exclusively from just outside the CNN building.
Yeah, like if you stay in the Metro Atlanta area, you might get it's a pretty purplish leaning blue state that's going to go pretty hard blue for Joe Biden. Yeah, you might get it there. If you get anywhere outside the metro bubble, like even just come out to freaking Gwinnett. We're a 50-50 county that can elect Democrats, but it's a clear dividing line where the metro line ends in the middle of our county. It turns red immediately and doesn't stop until the end of the state.
Well, to be fair, there's probably a blue zone surrounding the MARTA line as well.
That's true, but that's thankfully not in my county until that stupid thing finally gets pushed through on the election ballot. That's something I'm actually worried about because people don't pay attention to in Georgia. Every 4 years in Georgia, whenever there's a presidential election, and sometimes in the midterms as well, some laws that require increased taxation will come up for vote on the ballot. And one of those is, would you like to expand public transportation by increasing your taxes by X%?
The idea that someone would vote on that, I guess that they could just use tricky wording.
Yeah, and they do. In one of them, I was running around the office telling people, listen, One of the questions is worded wonky. You need to tell it yes to not get taxed more. So, yeah. Ugh. So, yeah, Joe's not getting Georgia. Not unless they cheat harder in some of these counties than they've ever cheated before. So, it's fun times there. I think there was one more smaller thing I wanted to bring up before we close.
Texas.
Yeah, the Texas car train. So
Yeah, there's been a very active. There's some very active imaginations amongst the media, wherein they have devised a creative story regarding the Mad Max like scenario that allegedly played out in Texas.
So let me give you the context of the setup for how this event came to be in the first place, and then I'll tell you what I saw in the video and what anybody else with two brain cells rubbed together can see. So Joe Biden has a campaign van driving around Texas. I do not know off the top of my head if Joe was in the van. I doubt it. Or if it was just his campaign staff going around to do campaign hits publicly or with media somewhere. Could have been either one. They're driving around Texas, and I'm not sure how it happened, but presumably by God directing the wheels of the cars that were around at the time, a caravan of 100 or so Trump cars just started following the Biden van everywhere, led by a hearse.
Which is delightful.
And so they just start chasing the Biden van around. And this trend continues the next day. And I think they were minus the hearse the second day. They're chasing the Biden van around. And the second day, and I think the first day as well, the Biden van couldn't stop anywhere else because there's a caravan of Trump supporters behind it. Wherever it stops, they're going to have a whole bunch of MAGA chuds that outnumber the Biden voters that are going to rally. So they have to give up. And they have to give up the second day because they're back. And so there ain't getting no campaigning done in the outskirts of Texas. And during the second day, I think, a white SUV / minivan, it's hard to tell, is driving around in the middle of the Trump parade for some reason. They probably merged onto the interstate to follow them or something. And there's like 2 lanes open on the left side that the Trump train is not occupying that anybody can use to go around them because conservatives are decent people and aren't going to stop you from living your life with their little displays. We're not going to come burn down your business or anything or obstruct traffic. This guy decides he needs to get in the right lane. And there's a truck in the other lane that has a whole bunch of Trump paraphernalia all over it and American flags and stuff. And this white minivan gets into his lane, running this guy either into the other lane or off the road. It's hard. I can't remember off the top of my head if he was on the shoulder or if he would have been pushed into another car. And they try to muscle their way in. And the guy in the truck, seeing he's got nowhere to go, just recourse corrects to stay in his lane, and the guy in the white minivan hits him. And this is being framed by everybody, even Fox News, as Trump supporter sideswipes poor innocent lefty as they're harassing this Biden van or whatever, or some variation thereof. And they use this also to spin the titles of their articles as Trump caravan surrounds and blocks the Biden van. That isn't what happened.
I've also seen people putting it up alongside pictures of like ISIS convoys and stuff.
Yeah.
Like this sort of transparent scaremongering going on is somewhere between outrageous and pathetic.
It is hilarious to me because I think this is an example of the left rank and file not realizing that they're projecting. They do not realize that what the right was doing was practically the most civil form of protest possible to somebody coming to town that you don't like.
What would the left wing know about civil protests?
Yeah, it wasn't even protest is the wrong word. Display, I suppose. They followed the van. They stayed in their lanes. They did not do anything other than blow your horn, and there is no law against honking your horn while you're driving on the road, as far as I'm aware. You could probably nitpick me on that, but nobody's been arrested for it in the last 500 years.
Well, I mean, you can't actually get a warrant of fitness for your car in New Zealand if your horn doesn't work. So it's presumed that you're going to use it at some point.
So a bunch of Trump supporters following, not blocking, not surrounding the Biden van around and honking their horns at it while staying and leaving the farthest left lanes open intentionally so people can go around them. Not through any organized means, I might add. This seems to be purely organic. They just left those lanes open.
I would also like to note that that BLM protesters have been constantly obstructing roadways.
Yes.
Over the past few months.
Yeah. And you're going to try and construe like your dude sideswiping a Trump guy is the Trump folks' fault somehow? Yeah, right. Get out of here. You're the same people that set up roadblocks and cried on Twitter and Instagram and whatever whenever somebody went around your little blockade of people laying in the middle of the street on a not a private road, but a smaller road and on a back road somewhere that people don't have a method of turning around on. Like, what in the world are these people? How can you process that? That should not compute on its face. But
I think that this is just, TDS in action, basically.
Yeah, it's Trump derangement syndrome needs to be... The DSM is filled with a whole lot of garbage that can be cut out and just replaced with TDS.
Well, TDS is just basically hysteria. Hysteria with a particularized flavor.
Yeah, it needs to be in some kind of manual somewhere because it's a real thing that has swept the globe, and people afflicted by it become unreasonable dick waffles.
Yeah, and it is certainly unreasonable. I keep seeing it in New Zealand all the time. People who are warbling about what a terrible person Donald Trump is, and they don't know anything about him. Like, because the particulars of American policy are not reported in New Zealand for the reason that they don't affect us. Because this isn't America. So it doesn't matter what American policy is. So despite the fact that because of that they don't know anything about American policy, still, somehow everyone still knows Orange Man bad.
Yeah. So, and you can't even say, oh, Orange Man not that bad, because that'll get you probably blown up worse than saying MAGA. Ugh. But yeah, really funny. I want to highlight how proud I am of these Trump guys and how they handled this. This is how you do it. This is how you shut down the opposition without violence.
I'm impressed that they had a hearse. I really am.
I want to know the guy that got the phone call and like, there's a parade of Trump dudes following this Biden van around. Go get your hearse.
But yeah, it all goes. That all goes to the fact that I think that the right side of the aisle it hasn't forgotten what comedy is, because they still want their jokes to be funny. It's not enough for people to clap, which is all that most left-wing comedians are after. Is they just want the applause of their people.
Yeah. You take away the nasty spin the media gave this, and this is a genuinely funny Trump campaign moment where his supporters BTFO'd the Biden staff. And they did it in a creative and fun way.
Yeah, and there's no reason why anybody would be hurt in a scenario like this.
Yeah, and they did not obstruct anybody in doing so. I'm genuinely impressed. Unless something comes out that proves me wrong, and I sincerely doubt it, because if it does come out, I'll just think the media is lying at this point. This is something I applaud. This is how you do it. This is a good way to fight back. If you don't like what they're doing and you don't want their message to get around, then be there and make sure you're loud and they can see you while they're giving that message, and they'll run away with their tail between their legs.
Yeah, it's peaceful but trolly.
Yeah, like they could have stopped at any of their campaign stops. They could have held their media press events that they claim are rallies. They could have done it. but they didn't because they were scared of the massive number of Trump supporters that would outnumber them and make it and just show to the world that their message is a lie and that nobody wants Joe.
But yeah, I'm expecting while I'm expecting California to stay deep blue, I am expecting them to lose more counties
Yeah.
to the side of the aisle. I mean, you just got to look at the sheer number of people turning out to support Trump, even in California.
Even in Beverly Hills, man. If you wanted to ask me what the bluest area of the U.S. was other than Portland, I would have gone with Beverly Hills. But man, they were flooding the streets. Like, people are on board for Trump. It's not just that they don't like Joe Biden, it's that people love Trump that love Trump. I haven't seen
Well,
Republicans get out and do crap for any other president.
well, Obama inaugurated the concept of the celebrity president. Like before, you did not see George W. going on late night comedy shows and stuff the way Obama constantly did, and he was famous for causing massive traffic jams in LA because he was showing up to another bullshit TV show. And they, of course, when the president is in the traffic stops moving because he has to be surrounded by Secret Service cars and stuff. So this is Obama's fault. Obama created Trump in more ways than one. It was not just that people were sick of the way he did things and the way his policies worked and so on and so forth. He created the idea that the president should also be a celebrity. I mean, you can make the argument that, oh, well, Reagan was a celebrity and that's how he got elected because people knew Reagan.
The idea of
I don't know,
celebrity is different nowadays than it is in the 80s. They didn't have the same automatic cult of personality they're given these days.
Yeah, and I think that basically they got Trump elected because people were looking for someone who had more star power, who could meme harder, and now we have the shit poster in chief.
Yeah, and it just so happens that he's also the geotest that does what he says he's going to do. Like, we really lucked out on that one.
Yeah, it could have gone real bad, but Ben freaking Shapiro is going to vote for Donald Trump this time,
And that,
on a basis of policy.
if that boy did not have Knowles and Clavin on his network, he would be ragging on Trump.
He would have ended up like David French, no question about it.
Yeah, he would have died. Like, his career would be over. He should be thanking those boys for keeping him in check from going full Never Trump live on air.
Well, he thinks that he is a perfectly rational individual and he doesn't have any biases whatsoever.
No, of course, not at all. So, on that note, there are some things that signal good things coming. We'll know on election day.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it play out. There's a lot of people in New Zealand who dread it because they've been told that the world will end if Donald Trump is elected, and somehow that's still going to affect us. And I really very much want Donald Trump to be elected because it would be nice for there to be one free Anglophone country that I could go to when New Zealand eventually descends into full fash. But
It makes
we'll just wait and see.
Yep, if Trump gets elected, the calculus on how to move forward in life stays fairly simple. If Joe Biden gets elected, well, the calculus does not involve happy things.
No, because there's nowhere to go at that point. There are no free nations left.
Yeah. The only option is ones we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are large parts of Australia that are still relatively sane.
Yeah, in the bush.
Well, yeah, but the trade-off, of course, is that you have to live in Australia where everything wants to kill you instead of just the left.
I mean, if we didn't have the federal government oppressing us, we would be very much like the bush where I'm living at right now. We have a freaking emu farm.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's why I grieve so much for the loss of the country that I grew up in, because the country that I live in now is not the same one, and the idea that you would even be willing to accept a handout from the government in the world that I grew up in, that would have been absolutely disgusting. People would be like, I don't need a handout. I'm independent. I can make my way on my own. If I need things, I can figure out how to make them myself. If I can't afford food, I'll grow it in my garden and hunt it from the bush. Like, that was just the attitude of New Zealand when I was a small child.
Man.
And now I need nanny government to take care of everything.
You say grow it in my garden, and all I can think of is the Chaz.
The chest. Like I hated gardening. I was terribly bad at it, and I drew absolutely no pleasure from it whatsoever. But I did grow up in an environment where everybody had a garden and grew vegetables. If I needed to, I could do it.
Oh yeah, I'm the same way. I had the opposite of a green thumb in that I would occasionally get something to grow, and it would only really grow if somebody else helped me. But I never participated in gardening besides helping out other people, really. But it's something I learned how to do
But
because
my
everybody did
family,
it.
my family still eat their vegetables from the garden. They grow their vegetables in the garden, and my father still goes out and he'll hunt deer and pigs and goats and bring them home, and we eat the meat from the bush. That used to be New Zealand. Everybody was like that to at least some extent. Even those like the impoverished Gibbs people in who were living in South Auckland or whatever, who had started to get addicted to the emerging welfare state. If you put them in the bush, they would still rustle up some grub for themselves.
You mean they wouldn't put a bunch of plants on topsoil on top of cardboard and try to water it with Sprite?
No, no, not so much because Sprite doesn't have electrolytes. You see,
Oh,
it doesn't have what plants crave.
oh my goodness. It really does make me feel bad for people that are technically our generation, but there's a group of us around you, between you and my age that just don't fit in with that group that grew up in a realm between the internet and the real world and saw both of them.
Yes, like and a lot of these skills are very simple, but you just don't need them anymore, and a lot of people never learned them. Like it was the things that my father showed me when I was growing up: how to set a snare to catch a rabbit, how to set a line to catch eels to eat, that sort of thing. Like
Yeah, my daddy never taught me those kind of things, but he taught me similar stuff, like even just how to cut down a tree,
yeah,
how to change a spark plug.
I never learned any automotive stuff, but I did learn a bit of bushcraft because in New Zealand everywhere is a stone's throw from the bush.
Yeah. So, I mean, how to cut down a tree, how to go through and get rid of the brush that's overgrowing your yard, how to properly care for all the stuff on your property, how to take care of your car. I mean, my dad was never into hunting or doing any of that stuff, but he did a whole lot of the other normal person stuff that people just don't do anymore.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's really hard to fix most cars these days.
That is true. He always complains whenever
If I
some
pop the if I pop the hood of my car, everything in there is so densely packed now that I can't even identify what most of it is.
my father has created this sliding board that he has put a pad on the back of with wheels on for just for working on cars of newer models because the engines always have crap underneath them now.
I am, yeah, my father made one of those as well.
Yeah, like
He didn't put padding on it because he would have thought that it was soft.
if you ask my dad, he'll tell you is to get his body raised higher so it's easier to reach the stuff, not to cushion his 60-year-old back at this point.
Yeah, I don't believe him.
Yeah, I don't believe him either. But I think he tells himself that. I think he believes it, but I don't believe him. But so yeah, there's there can be some fun had in the lead up to the election. After the election, I want to focus a little bit on the negative, and then I'll end it on as much of a high note as I can, because we do need to be prepared for they have cheated hard enough to win. I'm not willing to give them credit for winning this election legitimately, because then you have to tell me not to believe my eyeballs.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem feasible. But I mean, the thing that makes me nervous about that way of thinking is that they thought that they thought that in 2016 that
They
that they never saw anybody supporting Trump, so they assumed that it was impossible for him to win, and he did.
they thought that, but there's a very distinct difference between the perspective of where I'm looking at it and they're looking at it. They were looking at it inside their own bubble exclusively. We are forced to see their bubble on the right. We're not allowed to only see our bubble. We have to see both. We can't isolate ourselves from the left. The left has infected everything. We see how pervasive it is and how and what types are attracted to it. But we also see inside of ours just by naturally being Republicans. So we can see the raw numbers of people that are showing up for Trump. We can see the enthusiasm. We can see the lack of enthusiasm for Biden. We can see the lack of people. We can see the holes in the arguments because we see the left's arguments because we're berated with them nonstop. We don't have the option to tune them out. The left in 2016 tuned us out and pretended like the right didn't exist. They wrote us off as some bunch of hicks in the hills in the breadbasket of the world that are just a basket of deplorables.
Yeah, that phrase is really going to go down in infamy, I think.
Yeah, but it really does capture what they thought of us. They thought
But
nothing of us.
didn't Biden call them ugly recently or something?
Yeah, he did in his latest, one of his latest rallies today, or yesterday, one of the two. But but yeah, and to say Biden wins legitimately is honestly to tell me not to believe my eyes, because I'm in the position of being a conservative in an era when I am forced to see both sides of the aisle, because the left has infected everything, and I do mean everything. Go pick up a copy of your favorite tabletop role playing game franchise and tell me it's not paused. You know, there is no way that I can believe that Biden will win legitimately. Count the signs, count the attendance at the rallies, count the just feel the level of enthusiasm there. This is not a close election. This is a landslide on its surface by any stretch of the imagination in a fair election.
Well, I mean, to play devil's advocate, those rallies have been largely kept secret. Like the recent ones that people have attempted to show up for, although they were attempting to show up for in small numbers, they don't really provide a very clean indication of actual support, because it was something like Biden's wife's sorority or something was the only source of publicity for it, something like that. And so nobody knows about them. They don't let people in because there's a good chance that Biden will disintegrate at one of them, and they don't need to let people see him falling apart in real time. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how good of an indication or bad of an indication those standards might be.
Yeah, it's and to shoot the devil a bit in his foot at least. Why would you need to do that if you weren't
Well,
on the back foot?
Because he's going to disintegrate.
Yeah,
I think that what they're trying to protect is not Joe Biden but Kamala Harris.
yeah,
They don't want to lose perfectly malleable President Kamala, because ultimately, while Joe Biden doesn't believe in anything, he's still an irascible old coot who will, I don't know, command ice cream be served at every meal or something like that. There's no knowing what he's going to go in for once he gets control. Like he's not necessarily gonna be Caligula, but you know what his predilections are like.
he's gonna mandate children rub his hairy legs.
Yeah, like he's gonna be giving out unsolicited head pats left and right. But yeah, it's I think that they are trying to protect Joe Biden's image because they want people to at least be treating him like the person they're electing. Because if you put Kamala Harris front and center, she's less popular than Joe Biden.
Yeah,
Less popular than Hillary Clinton.
that's a fairly impressive feat, if you ask me. That is in fact so bad, it loops all the way back around to you could list that on an achievement list.
Well, I mean, her achievements are very, 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 very few, and so maybe she would have to list that. But basically, that's her only skill, the only remarkable thing about her, other than her ability to progress her career by getting down on her knees, is that she manages to be more unlikable than Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Possibly the first person in history to be more unlikable than Hillary Clinton.
So yeah.
So they need to protect her because she is perfectly pliable and perfectly corrupt. She's perfectly corrupt in that all of her corruption is small time, and perfectly pliable in that she will go along with whatever she's told to do. They need that sort of person in charge. And keeping Joe Biden alive is just simply a means to that end.
Yeah, she is just the super spreader version of Joe Biden. And yeah.
Have you seen that narrative? Like I've seen that going around as well. That someone trying to claim that 700 people have died as a direct result of Trump rallies.
I've seen that, but it's it
Nobody
had
knows any of these people, but it definitely happened, right?
it caught my eye for a second enough to so it must have made the Twitter circles at least to get posted on the Donald or something. But I didn't see any more of it after that, so it must not have stayed in circulation for very long. But
I think that's one of those things that's so clownish that the people in the center simply will dismiss it.
yeah, so yeah, if they cheat Kamala and Biden into the White House, you need to be prepared for what they're going to do and how to act appropriately and how to deal with this as a legitimate threat to your liberties. I cannot give you all of your options safely through my public voice. But I can encourage you to be prepared for them to do something that is so beyond the pale that you may have to sacrifice your livelihood to stand up for how you know life should be lived.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking at a scenario where if the Democrats lose, then they riot and protest, and if they win, then they riot in celebration. So
And
I'm not really sure how you get out of this without dealing with a riot.
yeah, you need to be willing to understand that what you may have to do is a legitimate form of suicide. It not in that you will lose your actual physical life, but that the old you will be gone. The life you had is never coming back. If Joe
Yeah,
Biden gets elected,
they may in fact just decide to end society as it currently exists and implement their new world order locally. Like,
just,
I don't know. I still feel like viscerally, I feel like there is just so much cowardice amongst them that they will go softly for a very long time, and they'll try for a boiling the frog slowly in the pot type of approach because they'll want because part of trying to keep people pacified is to make them think that there is no problem.
well, they've
And so
tried
I'm
that.
more inclined to think that when the election actually happens, if they win, they will suddenly arrest all of these riots. And I don't mean literally arrest them, I mean that they'll just bring them all to a sudden close since they're all directed, so that they can create the appearance of, oh, well, Biden got elected and look how everything went back to normal and everything is safe and quiet now.
They might try that for a while, but I think the policies they're proposing are them turning the heat up on the frog a little too much, and the frog's starting to jump. That like they jumped it too high too quickly. This last term with Trump in office has been a huge leftward lurch by the left in general. They turned the heat on that frog up from about a 7 to a 10.5 on a scale of however many it feels like at that moment, because I haven't thought of this analogy for very long. But yeah, you need to be ready to accept that your life is going to change no matter what, and if you want to at least stand up for the old way things were and what this country was founded on, a legitimate risk to yourself, your livelihood, and your family's livelihood, if you're the breadwinner, may be in order. And that is not my call to make for you. But
Well, they will certainly try and cancel anybody who tries to stand up for the way things were.
yeah, you will lose quite a bit if you do so. I cannot make that choice for anybody, and nor would I want to. That would be horrible and wrong for me to demand that you do so. But I will put out a call and say every person that does is doing the right thing and would be greatly appreciated, and I will be one of them in a heartbeat. There will be no second thoughts about it.
Yeah,
So
I still would like to think that it's not going to come to that. I mean, it might be naive, but I would like to think that the sheer number of these people in actuality is so low that they can't do the things they want to do. There's so many people have just gotten wise to being to, how it actually feels to be told that they can't work, that they can't do what they want, that they can't go what they want, where they want, they can't say what they want, that there's just not going to be the support for
yeah,
it. That they will have civil disobedience on such a mass scale that you can't actually tell that civil disobedience is taking place because the authority is simply being ignored.
yeah. And that just becomes an unenforceable law, like you can't have a donkey in the street or something, or wear hoodies up, stuff like that. So, and we have those laws on the books, but we'll have to just do whatever you can to tell these people no. And if it comes to it, use the appropriate level of action you deem appropriate for the situation.
I don't think that it's going to be an every man is an island situation, because I think that there are what these rallies do show is that there are a lot of patriots in America who love their nation and they love it the way it is now. Not some grand vision of the Green New Deal. That's not what they love. That's not the America they love. So it's not going to be, every man has to run out and start Aloha snack barring the local abortion clinic or whatever.
No, I'm not telling you to Aloha snack bar the abortion clinic. That is the opposite of what I'm telling you to do. I'm telling you to be cognizant of the laws as they are made under the Biden administration.
What I'm saying is that if there is any kind of serious civil disobedience style action that needs to be taken, I think that the right-leaning portions of the population are suitably industrious and entrepreneurial that they will simply build the structures that are necessary. Democrats can't build things. They only take things over and exploit them until they decay into nothing. But the Republicans do tend to build things, which is why they're never successful in politics long term, is because they're too busy doing things that they think are constructive and interesting, rather than living off the government teat for 47 years as a senator.
Yeah.
There will be structures in place. Your idea of your nation need not die so long as people are upholding it, because you will simply construct that part of your nation that you want to live in.
And if you are one of those entrepreneurial types, and that's where your skill set lies, and that is where you feel the appropriate level of action to be taken is, go for it. It would be a boon. Know that you will endure hardships in the time you are building it, though, and it will be significantly worse than the standard business.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because the IRS will come after you, basically.
Yeah, the IRS will be weaponized.
The party's been through that before. Like they know what that looks like now, and
So,
you will simply see, as happens in a lot of these cases, parallel markets will spring up. You simply will cease to do business with people who are corrupt. That's how these things play out in real life, is that you end up with black markets. Functionally, everything ends up being done with black markets. That's why you've got so much capitalist enterprise that happens in China, is because you can't operate under a Chinese planned economy. You simply can't. You can't do anything profitable. Everything has to be done by free market means. So they have a black free market that operates underneath the government.
Yep. And so yeah, the other thing, if Joe Biden gets cheated into office, is, hang on, I'm gonna sneeze. I think I just sneezed my point away. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. I got interrupted again. I'm having a lot of Joe Biden moments today. That one was a sneeze that made me forget, but I'm forgetting stuff a lot tonight. Trying to cover too much with too much stuff going through my brain before the election. Just a lot to think about.
I don't. It's a rather excessively ennobled idea of America, but I frankly think that America is stronger than being defeated by a bunch of this type of petty tyrant. I mean, Joe Biden is just such a laughable enemy to have.
Yeah.
He's such a joke. A tragic joke at that, because he really belongs in a retirement home somewhere under full-time care because he doesn't have enough of his marbles to take care of himself. That's pretty obvious. Or he wouldn't be, high on Adderall out on stage every day.
Yeah. So yeah, be prepared for the worst. You have allies out there that still like the old America. You have people you can find and
you've got to keep in mind is if they cheat to get Joe Biden into office, it means you do not just have allies, but that in fact almost everybody is on your side.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about being outnumbered by the opponents ever again.
So be bold and be brazen about your support and opposition, just like they were with Trump. You need to play the game as they adjust the rules and make them regret changing the rules. You don't. People often say words like, "Oh, we can't sink to their level." That's bullshit. If they're playing dirty and we're still standing up and trying to do gentlemanly one-on-one fighting here, and they're pulling out a gun, I hope you got one in your back pocket, and if you do, you better pull it out too. We do not continue to do boxing when they're shooting at us, which is what they're doing. You need to hit them. We need to hit them harder and nastier, and make them regret ever doing this and want to go back to the old system, or at least pivot them off this crazy path they're on now onto something, anything else, to hope it's better. We gotta put them on the back foot. Don't be ashamed of your love of America and the old country. Don't be ashamed of your hate for Joe Biden and what he's doing. Call it out publicly. You will be ostracized for this. This is
I don't know
something.
that you will. Like that, I really don't know that you will. I don't know if you will be ostracized
I,
because I don't think anybody likes him.
I don't think anybody likes Joe, but I think he will be so protected that the sheep and the rank and file will do everything they can to make your life difficult. This is not as bad as taking active action like starting your own business or something that is directly going to run counter to the Democrats and become an enemy to them, but it's still a sacrifice to do so. There's real legitimate risk to your life, and well, to your livelihood, not your life specifically. Although maybe your life depends on how crazy they get by doing so. But I encourage it. We need to start hitting the Democrats back. We need to start winning these fights where we and stop letting them get away with crap for free. We need to start making them regret crossing lines. And we just haven't been able to do that as conservatives because it's not in our nature. But history and time has shown over and over again that's not the tack to take. It has not worked ever. We only lose ground doing that.
No, I think that there are lines though. There are lines that you don't cross, and I think that what what gives them the moral authority, what gives the right the moral authority to actually resolve. Oh well, ultimately they've changed the rules, so now we need to fight on their terms. We have to fight the way they fight. Like there are still borders on that, and I think that those borders are the legitimacy of choosing that course of action comes from your commitment that you're not going to do what they do
Yeah.
and simply use constant lying to accomplish what you do. Like their power is all illusory.
Yeah.
They take the evil things that they do, they project them onto their opponents and use their domination of communication systems in order to make everybody think that's reality. What identifies the right as the right in my mind is their commitment to acknowledging that reality is the way it is and human nature is the way it is. Reality is not defined by a panel of experts, and human nature cannot be engineered away.
Well, it's what
That's those are the philosophical commitments of the right, and you can't let go of those just because you think it would be expedient to rewrite reality in your favor in order to defeat your opposition. Because
well,
I mean that's
I
that's
don't
the
think
strategy the Nazis did use to defeat the communists.
I
They
don't
wrote a different.
I don't think we need to resort to lies though, because if we are currently the side that has the facts and the truth on our side on pretty much every single major big issue that's out right now. We can back up everything we say. We just need to drop these stupid rules of decorum, and if they put justices in the Supreme Court, when we get people into power eventually, we need to put justices in the Supreme Court too. Do not make new rules. Do not change the game. Let them change it if they really want to keep doing it, but don't be afraid to play by the rules that they change. Don't be afraid to start like calling them out on their bullcrap in public. Don't be afraid to get in some of their faces. As long as you're not creating a scenario that makes you a liar, I think you're still playing a fair ball game after the left's already changed the rules. As long as you're still telling the truth, as far as you know it to be true, honestly and truthfully, with and that you have looked at somewhere in the past, I think you're in the clear, no matter what you do there.
Ultimately, what I'm getting at here is that if you're going to end up becoming the underdog, you can't let it devolve. You can't let your resistance to your opposition devolve into a game of red team versus blue team. It's still got to be founded in your principles. And that is the fig leaf which is being used to protect this rules of decorum thing, because they have baked this whole rules of decorum thing into the idea of what their principles are.
Yeah, but they don't have them at the moment, and we can still have them while not letting them get away with this garbage. I think. I think.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing to the contrary. I'm just saying that you can't let that slip, because when two sides get entrenched for long enough, it's very often devolves into red team versus blue team, and your moral legitimacy comes from the idea that you're basing your action on principle and not on partisanship.
Yeah. When I
That's the reason why people will support you, is if you take that course.
yeah, it's a it's a longer discussion that we could get into, but I'm really not fully prepared to get into it. But in the detail that we're hinting at there. But yeah, just be ready to do something if Biden wins. Don't sit on your hands. Don't take your licks, because that's what the conservatives do, and that's what ticks me off so much about the conservatives in America, is they are steadfast and sturdy, but they do not have any method of actually acting in their own interests. These are the types that'll tell you, oh, well, Twitter's a private business, and still call themselves conservatives, even though they're being used as a weapon by the left to completely push ideological agendas that no conservative in their right mind wants. And they have infected the space to such a degree that nobody can offer a contrary opinion.
I don't think that that's really the argument. It's the argument people use. I don't think that it's a good argument. I think that all that you need to say in order to oppose that point of view is that only applies so long as they're a platform.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they have a right to act and editorialize the way a business would act and editorialize, so long as they are obeying the laws of business. If they're a platform, that argument simply doesn't apply to them. Period. End.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what their views are. It doesn't matter how fair or unfair they're being. As long as they're editorializing, then they can be a free business all they want, because people are accepting on the outset, like I've argued in the past, that, oh well, they are joining, community X in that context. They're not joining a platform.
Yeah.
If they're going to be granted the status of a platform, then they have to act like a platform, and that means that they don't have the right to say, "Oh, my freedom as a business."
Yeah. I am dancing around the example and the issue I actually would like to bring up here, because until the election, I would like, my voice to still be existent on the internet, so that I can say I tried to do this the fair and nice way. But because this all comes down at the end of the day to the power of the people that are enforcing the laws that do not know how to enforce them correctly. And there's a very specific way to rectify that problem that has been done quite a few times in the US, actually, that is not kosher for YouTube. So until the election's over, I will not be advocating openly for that, although those of you that live in the US and have studied US history can probably guess what I'm talking about. So that is really where I'm getting at with that. It is just not a kosher thing to say onto YouTubes. So yeah, that's your negative, I think. If Biden wins, I will get more into detail on that. Otherwise, I will leave it alone. The other thing is, what if Trump wins? This is what we want. We want Trump to win. We want as big of a House win as possible.
We'll still need to put up barricades, though.
Yeah, still keep your barricades up. The left is going to chimp out. You still have to be prepared.
It will be a chimp out of epic proportions. Put your barricades up, but also have your cameras at the ready, because it is likely to be hilarious.
Yes, you will get a show out of it. How good of a show that is with picture quality and camera angle depends on how big of a risk you're willing to take. Those of you that are on the front lines, you're doing God's work by making me laugh every day.
There are people who, they might not be willing to die for the Republic, but they are willing to put their life on the line for the lulz.
Yeah. So in this scenario where Trump still pulls it out despite their obvious cheating, I think we can reasonably assume that Trump is not going to allow the kind of election shenanigans like that to ever happen again. He's going to be too ticked off by it personally that it was even attempted, and it will be shut down by him. And so the method of correcting the issue of getting the people in power who will actually do something and enforce the laws as written will not be an issue if Trump gets reelected, I don't think. Because we'll be able to, in future, course correct through elections like normal. Now, if Trump also wins, you need to be writing your senators and representatives on every single issue you think is a little bit relevant. It doesn't matter if the secretary is the one that reads it and throws it in the bin. Because what the
You've
senators
only
go,
got 4 years. You need to seize the day. You really do.
yeah, yeah, or carpe noctem if you prefer the nighttime like I do. And then you can, anyway, if the secretary is the only one getting it, I guarantee you what every single one of your representatives and senators does is they walk into their office, they go, "Hey Kathy, what kind of mail I got?" And she's gonna go, "Oh, you got a whole lot of mail talking about how Twitter's should just have, and its status as a platform revoked because it's clearly editorializing and the law should be enforced as is. A whole lot of that coming in. Maybe you should look into that." Okay, Kathy, that's what's gonna happen.
This like as sort of a, I'm going to hint at the segue because this, if we could talk forever about the topic, but what you're describing is actually how the deep state operates.
Yeah,
Because it's actually those functionaries like the secretaries who do the thinking for their senators, and they don't change with the administration a lot of the time.
yeah, but force feeding them a whole lot of information, they are weak to the same things you and me are, to the same things the average person has been infected by TDS with: repetition. Repeating an idea to them as something that the people want over and over again will eventually get through, whether they want it to or not.
Might work in America, doesn't work in New Zealand. We tested it.
Did you?
Yep. 4-1 submissions from the people opposing euthanasia. Euthanasia passed more than 60% in favor in the referendum.
Man.
Doesn't work.
But
the people that actually cared enough to actually write submissions to the government were completely brushed aside.
So people that are actively engaged in politics have a pretty clear idea what should be done, but the people that are going to vote are a bunch of low IQ idiots. And I say low IQ tongue in cheek because I don't put that much weight on IQ.
Well, I mean, I find it amusing because I always remember that part of the debate where Trump's like, he's talking about catch and release, and he's like, the ones that come back, I hate to put it like this, but they don't really have a very high IQ.
But yeah,
I thought it was really funny. I'm not even sure why.
Yeah. The point is, if Trump is elected, you don't have to upend anything in your life. You can continue as normal. I would still encourage you to be vocal about your support of Trump from here on out as much as you can going forward.
Don't get complacent. These things only last 4 years.
Yeah.
There's not another term ahead of this. Although presidential term limits, they're not really that old. Like, you could probably overturn those if you wanted. I'm not saying it'd be wise to do so, but you could do it.
We would really need a BTFO there cheating and get a supermajority to do that with an entire party of people that was on board with it.
I know. I'm just saying that it's actually not impossible because term limits, they're not part of the Constitution. No, they're something introduced much, much later.
I think they're a formal amendment.
They're with good reason, but you can overturn amendments. There are certain amendments that I think should be overturned, like the one which allows income tax.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys can get rid of income tax, I'll move there tomorrow.
But yeah. So, yeah, continue to be vocal about stuff that you think is important, but especially continue to be vocal about your support of Trump, because after the last 4 years, it is going to be so cathartic to go around and rub these people's faces in it. And you need to do it. You need to wake these people up. It is a cruel kindness to go around and stick their faces in the dirt and go, "Look what you did. Look what you supported. Look at how you thought the world was on your side and you only did it because you thought more people would like you. Look at how many people actually disagree with you."
I don't know that it's going to do anything because they're in the cult now. They're 100% in the cult.
But does the cult...
People don't recover from that. Like, cult deprogramming takes years and years and years, and just ridiculing people doesn't do it. I don't think that the people who are really, really in the tank, I don't think that there's anything left to save.
I don't think you can get the diehard lefties in, like, Portland or California, but I think you can get the rank and file by just going out and... Because you don't need to actively attack them to rub their face in it. You just have to...
I think most of those people will just go home and they'll go about their business until the next election and they'll start to chimp out again. So I don't think that most of them actually care very much. They are virtue signaling that they care because there's advantage to doing so.
Yeah, but I don't think you actually have to take any antagonistic action to rub it in their faces, is what I mean. I think just by showing support for Trump and being open about it and increasing the number of people that are happy that they won and just showing that we exist to these people will do a ton of damage because
Well, I
conservatives in
mean,
general are pretty quiet.
that's well, no, that's been happening this entire 4 year term, and it has been absolutely hilarious to be sure. But I don't think that it's going to make any difference this time round any more than it did last time round.
I think I think
Wearing your MAGA hat in public is going to do the exact same thing this time as it did last time, except now that they know that they're not going to get Trump again at the end of 4 years.
I
So
don't know.
if anything, I think the effect might be lower.
I think it has some point in that right now the left still, even with the size of the rallies and the size of the people showing up and the number of Trump signs everywhere, doesn't see the right as existing because they're so isolated. And I see it more as a way of forcing their bubble open by just seeing more people that are public about it. Because a lot of people right now are not public about it in their personal lives.
Because they're not dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous. But after the election, there is a calculated risk, though significantly less risky if Biden gets in office, opportunity that you can take just by showing support for the recently elected president and being open about it. Stick a Trump sticker on your car or something. And it just helps break through this bubble and may show maybe enough to push somebody down the road of whether they consciously realize it or not. Oh, there's more people out here supporting this guy that I've been calling Satan forever. Maybe I should look into that a little bit and see why these people support him. Oh, and then they start guzzling red pills. That's the dream anyway.
I think ultimately the thing that will accomplish that more than anything any individual can do will simply be the election itself, because I think that there are a lot of people who really do think nobody supports Trump because the media's been telling them forever, and they don't want to fall out of lockstep. They don't. It's dangerous to fall out of lockstep with everyone else, so they simply won't do it. They'll just, they'll talk the talk and they won't do anything else. They'll dutifully trot up and vote for Biden and then go home wondering why they bothered to waste their day. But I think that it's if the Democrats fail to cheat sufficiently, what you will actually observe is a landslide of epic proportions, and I think that will give all the information that people need, because
I think
the normal people are going to see, oh well, actually, it was everybody the whole time was a Trump fan, and I've been lied to by everybody.
Yeah, I am not optimistic enough to think we'll get the dream scenario where we outvote the cheating everywhere to cause a landslide. I think they are entrenched enough in their cheating and confident enough in enough places that it'll be a moderate win, is what I'm guessing. And I'm not using any polls to model this. Goodness,
it would be so cool. The chimpanzees would be even more legendary.
I know, and I want the dream too, but I'm thinking more in terms of like a pretty significant win, but not a blowout.
In this context, there's one more topic that I wanted to talk about, which is how long do you think this is going to take to resolve? Because I'm willing to bet that it's not going to be resolved on election day.
Okay, so all these recommendations I gave to you, I forgot to mention this. You need to keep them on hold until we get the final results in, until the inauguration happens, basically, because I think this is going to go up into past the date in December where they're allowed to count votes. I honestly think they're going to just try and play games to cheat this thing all the way home, because they don't have anything else. They have been setting up to cheat the whole time.
Yeah, but how is this going? What is the shape of this going to be? Because I think we are going to see the Red Mirage. We're going to see that. That's what's going to happen on election day, probably.
Yeah.
In my opinion, based on what I've observed, I think that the Red Mirage will be what we see. The question is what's the time frame, and what is the media cycle going to look like as they try and roll out their subsequent counting votes until they have enough?
So this is where the future gets fuzzy, but I think there's a most plausible line of events that's probably going to follow. The election's going to happen. Trump's going to win. It's going to be decisive. No questions asked. Probably by a pretty substantial majority, but not a landslide, like I said. And then we're going to go, and nobody's going to call it because all the networks are in the bag. And it's the news media and the networks that call the election, not any kind of official organization. not some kind of federal bureaucracy or government agency that does it. It's the news media. They're the ones permitted to call it.
So, but then what's stopping them deciding? You know what? I feel stink because we lost again because we suck at our jobs. So we're just going to spin this out, and we'll hold our own inauguration.
That's what I think. I think that they're going to stall this out as long as they can and try and force Trump to have to take this to the Supreme Court and make
Because
it.
I really do think that there's a good chance we're going to end up in a situation where it will be inauguration time. As far as the results currently stand, Trump is the winner, and it's obvious that the winner. The left are just going to chimp out and chimp out and chimp out, and they will hold their own parallel inauguration. And since they will be inaugurating their personal president, they will say that, oh well, Trump is refusing to relinquish power to the duly elected new president, and that's going to become the new narrative, is that Trump is doing what they claimed he was always going to do, which is hide in a bunker and claim that the presidency is still his.
So I don't want to speculate that far ahead because it gets way too fuzzy at that point, because a lot of this stuff is going to get held up by the courts. And I would imagine the Supreme Court is going to have a fire lit under its butt to get this stuff resolved as quickly as possible for their own reputations, because they won't want the spotlight on themselves for this, no matter what happens.
The thing is, surely the Democrats are going to avoid letting it get that far because they think Amy Coney Barrett is Satan.
I mean, yeah, but they
they think that fight has already been lost, so surely they've got some backup plan.
I don't know that they do. And I think they're going to stall this out as long as humanly possible and keep taking it to the Supreme Court a la Bush Gore. And they're going to back Trump into a corner where he has to use the Supreme Court to declare that he won because the Democrats are playing dirty games. And it's going to be unambiguous to anybody that's following it closely that it's the Democrats that are cheating, the Democrats that are playing funny games, the Democrats that are lying. But they're going to use that to try and spin to their base to keep them in the cult of, hey, look, he cheated. This is how he got the election. That much I think is obvious. I think that's what they're going for, because they know they've lost.
The Democrats again. You need to take that boy out behind the chemical sheds and put him out of his misery.
That's getting dangerously close to what I was avoiding earlier.
Because that guy doesn't seem to know or care anything about the law.
Yeah. No, John Roberts votes on basically his feelings.
I don't even know if he does that. I think he votes on what he had for breakfast that morning.
Yeah.
Right, it was toast this morning, so we'll go with the Republicans. Today it was cereal, so we'll go with the Democrats.
What if he has eggs?
If he has eggs, then he abstains, and the court ends up hung.
I see. So, yeah, I do not know. The forecast is going to be wonky no matter what. But if Trump comes out ahead on election day by a significant margin, take it and run with it, and just be happy for a little bit, because it's going to be a rocky ride afterwards. We'll come back and cover it as much as we can, assuming I'm not dead. And a lot of this, the ball is in the left's court. No matter who wins or loses, the ball is in the left's court in how this game goes. We're unfortunately, because we're conservatives, are forced into our usual reactionary position, and we don't have any real offensive actions we can take at the moment that are moral.
I don't see how any right-thinking person can not see it as a really grim lookout that in this scenario, the election process and also the Democrat Party are both synonymous with the media.
I mean, it's obvious to most right-leaning people.
But people don't seem... Number one, there seem to be a lot of people who genuinely buy into that narrative that the Republicans have absolute control over the mainstream media. And I'm not quite sure how you can be blind enough to think that that's the case, but I keep seeing it over and over. And secondly, I didn't just say that they were Democrat operatives. They are synonymous with the election process. That because they are the ones that call it, ultimately they're the ones that call it, and people will only accept the leader that they are willing to accept. That's why they've been pretending that Trump didn't actually win in 2016 for the last 4 years. It's because the media were doing that.
Yeah.
That's why it's become fashionable to refer to the president just by their last name instead of with his title. because they have been pushing that aggressively the entire time. Like there was a time where, probably more than half of Republicans, no matter how much they loathed President Obama, would still refer to him as President Obama and not just Obama.
Or the president or Mr. President if addressing him directly. Yeah.
That's not the case under this administration because the media have not accepted that his presidency over the past 4 years has been legitimate.
Well, that's
why those rubes be part of the electoral process.
Well, that's not. That's not 100% accurate because they do break their own rules because they're Democrats, and they will use the term "the president" if they specifically don't want Trump's name attached to anything good.
Yeah. In that case, it's the office acting; it's not the person.
Yeah. So the Democrats are. All of this is so transparent. I think most conservatives can see it clearly, or at least see it much clearer than a Democrat can. And because we are forced.
I think the Democrats can see it as well. They just don't see it as a problem.
I genuinely think they don't register it. It may come into their eyeballs, but they do not process what's going on with it.
Because they really do seem to think that what the media relates to them is just the truth. It's just the truth, just the unvarnished truth.
It's there was an effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect, I think, where if you read a topic in the news that you're proficient in, and you have a good understanding of, you'll read the news coverage of it and go, that's garbage. And then you'll flip the next page and read an article about hockey or something and go, oh, that's perfectly normal.
That's the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the effect where a little bit of expertise convinces you're an expert, and a lot of expertise reminds you that you don't know jack.
Oh, okay. So I get all these names and stuff mixed up, but yeah, it's an effect that I think has been broken on the Republican Party because we see the media as completely incompetent now and don't trust anything as a whole. Like, we have to check everything, those of us that are even a little bit clued in. You still have the Republicans that are your opossum types that will go rah-rah Republican just because Republican. You have the Democrats that are the same, but you can't count those people into calculations because you can't change those people. Those people don't do a whole lot of thinking. But the people on the left that would be our equivalents are so isolated from conservative thought that if any idea that weasels its way into their bubble will just become the truth, and the media is part of their bubble.
Well, I think they've got a lot of layers of sort of what is the term? I can't remember what the term is, but they've got a lot of sort of artificial layers of perception checking in there, where like they've got totems like quote the science unquote, and this totem is of such revered position. They venerate the totem of the science so much that if the science tells them not to believe their lying eyes, the science has to be right.
Yeah.
And the science has nothing to do with, the process of science or the discipline of science. It's just a totem. Yeah. The science, capital letters and a trademark after the E. Like it's like an idol that they worship, and it can subvert their thought process because they're absolutely loyal to it.
Yeah, I call it their religion a lot because I think the comparison is apt. It's very much so a thing they have. And
even if they would otherwise be rational, their loyalties lie to something else. Their loyalties are to these ideologies. It's the accusation that they make. Like it was an accusation made against the pro-life lobby in New Zealand, because in New Zealand Christianity is rapidly approaching the position of a reviled position in society is to be publicly known as a Christian. Like there's a narrative circulating that if we just exterminated all of the Christians, COVID would go away. Like that's a real thing that people believe in this country.
Yeah.
But that one of the things that happened during the debate over whether euthanasia bill should be passed was that an expert in palliative care, like a professor who specialized in it, was on stage debating against the Libertarian Party's coalition, the Libertarian Party's leader, who was the head of the coalition of politicians backing the euthanasia bill, and he's just a politician. And I think it was a woman. I can't remember if it was a man or a woman. I think it might have been a woman. It was an expert in the field, and he told her her opinion was not valid because her faith would get in the way of her rationality. That's that's how they think, and I think that like everything, when the Democrats apply that, it's projection. Their faith in their totems, their faith in their ideology, their faith in the media, their faith in the science, TM, all of that sort of thing, it curtails their rational thought because anytime that they have some thought that disagrees with the narrative, they check it against their totems and ideologies, and if it comes back saying no, you aren't allowed to believe that, then they just won't.
And I think this will lend itself. If Trump wins, I foresee a lot of discussions if we continue this show on how to break that conditioning. I think that will be a regular topic that we often will talk about because it really is the bigger battle that needs to go on because these people have had this going on their whole lives. And you can't just break that in a day. It needs to be a gradual thing, and you need to have noodled out a process to do it, probably individually, but we'll have to talk about it some more and think about it a bit more to figure that out. But we
I
can't
think that
even...
the key touchstones in that equation, I think, will very much be things like the disintegration of the mainstream media, the disintegration of Hollywood, the disintegration of the big tech oligarchies, that type of thing.
Yeah. It'll be that kind of stuff that'll definitely help. And I imagine if Trump wins, we will have plenty of opportunity to discuss and talk to people about how we think they can best implement that, whatever we noodle through, and how maybe they can think about it. If Trump doesn't win, the discussion radically changes. The discussion changes from one of how to course correct to make sure this never happens again without radically changing anything to how do we survive.
Yeah, I think the big danger from a Trump win is complacency.
Yeah.
He
And
won't
this...
be around forever. He won't be there to hold the media at bay forever. All of those institutions need to be reconstructed in a way that allows a normal political process to take place before Trump is gone.
Yeah. And that's he magic wanded the economy. He brought peace to the Middle East. Can he break the media in 4 years?
Well, I think that their credibility is already in the toilet. The question is whether he can seal the deal.
Yeah, he's gotta come in with the finishing blow. He's gotta nail that finish him at the end of his Mortal Kombat match with the media.
I think that a lot of that will depend on the media, whether or not they chimp out to an order of magnitude greater, or whether they bunker down and hope that they can just weather the storm for 4 years.
Yeah. If we can break the institutions, we can talk to these people again. If we can shatter their monopolistic control over the hearts and minds of people, we can speak to them again. And then we get them stuck in the feedback loop of, oh, there are more people than just the people I had friended on Twitter to talk to. Oh, these are actual Americans that are talking to me. Oh, wait, they have different ideas than I'm used to, and they won't, need a safe space and have to go play with Play-Doh every time they hear a conservative opinion.
Yeah, while I think that the Never Trumpers are irrational, I think that they do expose one of the things that sets Republicans apart from the Democrats. And that's that Republicans always wonder if they're the baddies or not. Because if they're the baddies, then they've got to stop doing what they're doing. I don't
Yeah.
think the Democrats ever wonder if they're the baddies.
I think a lot of my rant earlier was criticizing us checking ourselves too much on that instead of having enough faith that because we found our ideas in truth and what we observe to be real in the real world, especially what we're up against now, that should be enough. And as long as you don't stray too far from that, I think we got it. And we're pretty okay to march forward with whatever we think is best after talking through with as many people as possible to get different perspectives. Because everybody's gonna if everybody could be king, they'd all do something different. But you know what I mean.
Bad things would happen.
Yeah, you don't want that. So I want to be hopeful. I want to say that Trump's gonna win and we'll be able to have future discussions about how to bring these people that have been TDS'd back into the fold, not through their crazy ideas like re-education or anything, but just like talking to them like normal, sane human beings and showing them there's a different perspective than the one you've been shown your whole life. like stuff you would do to a person you just met. But that can't happen unless Trump wins. And the calculus becomes much more hostile, and I will not be skirting words if Joe Biden does get elected. I'm giving him.
It sounds like you're going to try and turn this show into a Ben Shapiro Thug Life.
Oh, Ben Shapiro wishes he'll be as edgy as I'll probably get if Biden wins. If Biden wins, there will be no more dancing around topics. The gloves are off. I'm done playing. If you're gonna cheat and throw the game board out the window, we're not gonna play a game anymore. So, that's your foreshadowing for if Biden wins. But I would much rather have the same discussions about how to bring people that have TDS back into the fold. I think those are much more productive and happier discussions. So hopefully we get those. And plus, we get 4 more years of Trump. And who doesn't want 4 more years of Trump? The dude's awesome on camera.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the only thing that they need to be brought back to sanity is to come to the realization that they are just being manipulated into carrying out somebody else's grudge.
Yeah.
Their feelings towards Donald Trump were never their own. They're somebody else's.
Yeah. In fact, their beliefs in general are somebody else's. It would be amazing to get all those people back as independent thinkers. Think of all the entrepreneurs we could get out of that.
Yeah. And the significantly decreased support from having the government do everything for you.
Yeah, and we could have achievement in your personal life be a merit again. Oh, we're really living the optimism train tonight, aren't we? None of that's gonna happen. So, but we can hope. We can pray it can. Probably won't, but hope for the best and expect the worst, right? So, I think that's all we got. We were wrapping up 45 minutes ago, and it's been 45 minutes since I said we're winding down. So, you got anything else?
No, other than a pressing need to go to the bathroom.
All right, folks, that's the show. Have fun. Go vote in the election. Be sure you're informed on stuff. Check your candidates. Check your local representatives. Be sure you read the amendments and to your state constitutions and the proposed laws at the end of the ballot very carefully to be sure you're not accidentally voting yes on something that you should have voted no on and vice versa because it's wonky worded. And do your best. After the election, we'll talk more depending on who wins. We'll see you next time. See you later, folks.